Hi, it's Kyle Coberline, a truck and RV sales consultant with Bluegrass International in Georgetown, Kentucky. This past Saturday, I had a walk around, a delivery of a 2023 Renegade Verona 36VSB. The customer was nice enough to meet me early because my wife, we have a #2 child on the way, and I've got painting and all kinds of projects to get done. So we met at 7 a.m. on Saturday. If you ever meet me on a Saturday, whether just to be, look at an RV that we have or do a delivery, that is comfy clothes day. So you'll typically see me in blue jeans, plaid shirt, and probably some form of a trucker hat. Because I wear my work clothes enough, and no one ever seems to care. But I dress a little more casual on a weekend. But customer had requested that we do, he wanted to film the walk around, and I was like, well, sure. People will take their cell phones and film little things I talk about, but he wanted to get the whole thing filmed, which I thought was an awesome idea. So if anybody is interested, this is a 2-hour walk around on a 36 VSB between me and a customer. I do apologize. Normally I'm holding my camera when I'm filming, and I can see the feedback on the microphone. There was a issue with my microphone which I did not see, so the audio is coming off of the camera versus a lapel mic. The audio is still okay, it's just not as perfect as I would like, but we'll jump right into it. So check this out. So starting here on this fender, we have one of your Voyager side cameras, which is in your monitor up here. This is on your truck tires. What I tell everybody, this is a truck, so whenever you go, if you do have a flat or a valve stem issue or anything of that nature, it's best to think truck dealership, truck repair, just something truck related. Don't think Camping World or an RV place, because you'll get there, they won't have a jack that'll lift this up, or they won't have the tire tools to do this. So when you're front and side of the road needing a tire, you can just call like a mobile truck repair or something of that nature.
And do you recall the size of the tire that it is? I realize it's
2.25 rim. About
okay.
8 1/4. It's a 295/75 R22.5. The front. So the way this thing is geared, and of course the transmission, and then with the size tires. Of course we get into real detailed engine information here. But when you look at the revolutions of that, you just want to keep some of them a similar revolution when you're buying new tires in the future, because you want to keep your RPM range on your engine. You build horsepower and torque, and then on the Cummins engine you get up to your 360 horsepower and you hit your peak torque, and then that torque will flatline across for a couple hundred RPM, and then your horsepower will actually continue to climb. The problem is if your RPM gets too high, you actually start losing torque on the back end. So you just want to keep that revolution. So when you're buying another tire, you can just look up, you can Google that tire, what's the revolutions per mile, and then as long as the tire is something similar to that, and that only really matters on the rear, but you're still going to match the same tires front and rear. And then what I always tell people is odds are that tire will last 200,000 plus miles. So I don't recommend running it that far, because you won't do that in 5 years, not even close. So I tell people on the safe side on your front tires, I wouldn't let them go any longer than 5 years. Unless you notice issues, like if you see dry rot or any kind of rot, I'd replace them. You can maybe go a little farther on your rears, just keep a good watch on them. But I personally would kind of do the 5-year lifespan thing.
same size tire on the front and rear?
Yep. And there's a ton of options. This is a great tire for just overall on highway, gravel roads. You're not going to have a lot of traction issues, because this already has so much weight to it to begin with. It's not light. So the biggest problem you'd ever have with this unit is you go to some kind of activity, or let's say a racetrack or somewhere where they've got you're parking in a field. You got to start being cautious, because I don't care how much tread you have on your tires, your unit sinks to the frame rails, which is, I've heard it happening before from some of the guys that do dirt track racing here. You're a tow truck getting yanked out of there. It doesn't matter what you got.
Yep.
Down here in the front, so this unit is equipped with WABCO collision mitigation system. That's your front radar. Just keep in mind, if you are driving in winter conditions, that if you get like snow and ice buildup on the front, it will disable it. It'll like if you got your cruise control on, which is adaptive, where to slow down and speed up based on the people in front of you. It'll disable all that. So you can just let it be, or you can pull over and clean it off if necessary. And then up top is, and the new collision mitigation systems, I mean, everybody's pretty much running them now just because no one wants to get sued for the most part. So some of the old systems, I mean, they had some glitchy stuff to them where, a guy would come down a steep enough hill that it would see like a bridge overpass and like bump the brakes. But the new one, these are super reliable. They added like the camera function to them not too long ago. So not only is it using radar, but it's also using technology to like recognize actual objects and not just like a radar in the front. Really nice thing about buying Super C in general is just the fact that serviceability is one of the key aspects. It's a tilt forward commercial style hood. It's easy to get to everything. So I mean, here's your fuel water separator. You can see if there was any water down here, you can drain it. Probably like a decade ago, most of the manufacturers went to translucent reservoirs. So just by tilting the hood forward, you can see what the level of everything is. You can see your coolant on the other side, the windshield wiper fluid, which we'll walk over there. Biggest thing on the, of course, check your oil and all that kind of stuff. This is what makes it super nice. I mean, you get into like a Class A bus, it's all underneath the bed of an RV. It's just a lot hard to get to. The one thing I do say about the engine compartment, like it's a little dusty in here. Do not recommend power washing this. I mean, if you really want your engine compartment to look nice, you need to do it with a hand rag and a spray bottle of something. You've got tons of electronics in here and connectors, and you run a risk of messing something up.
Okay, good to know.
Oh yeah.
So
I know guys that want to. I mean, I talked to several people. They're like, "Oh, I want to pressure wash it." I'm like, "No, don't do that."
Yeah, I know. I do that.
Today there's just too many electronics. I mean, I had a car that I pressure washed the engine on, and my speedometer died.
Yeah. So what are the standard items that would typically be checked? Either before every trip here or at some regular frequency. So you said the water separator. You'd see water in the bottom of there.
This isn't. Once again, in the RV world, you're not driving near the mileage of a truck. Because this is something a truck driver would use, whether it be an aerial boom truck or a fire truck.
Right.
You get a lot more use than your typical. I'm not saying you guys won't, but most people don't. So it takes a lot. Most of this stuff can be checked annually. Like for example, on your fuel filter, with all the biodiesels today, they have issues with like gumming up filters more than your good old dyno diesel. And so what I tell people is like yearly, I would just replace that filter. Because if for any reason that starts starving your engine for fuel, it's just a pain in the rear. And that's not an expensive filter. So why not just once a year change it? That way when you go on your trip, you're not with the inconvenience of trying to track down a fuel filter when you're on your trip. Typically what I do is I'll service one every 12 months. So I'll do mine every year in March. I do my fuel filter, my air filters, oil filters, change the oil. I do the same thing with my generator. I'll change all the stuff all kind of one time of the year, so right before the beginning of my season.
No matter what the mileage is.
I do. Now, I've talked to several. I work in the commercial truck industry too, so I talked to a lot of like Shell Rotella, those guys that represent those companies. Those guys will tell you till they're blue in their face that their oils don't break down like they used to. The oils are good for every bit of 2 years with no problem. It's just me personally. Oil and coolant is the life of an engine, whether it be your tiller or your mower.
Yep.
And so I'm a huge advocate of just an annual service, and it'll just likely will last that much longer.
And you guys do all that here?
Yeah.
If we would choose to do that,
yeah. And in any you literally could take this. If you take your, if you guys move or you're out somewhere, you want a long whatever. But I mean, any truck dealer is where you want to go. So if it's Freightliner, Volvo, International, you're going to get the best service out of those guys. And the reason I say that is because the mentality is completely different. It's not just us.
Right.
When a truck rolls in here and needs to be serviced, it's a truck that's used to move product around the country. So whether it be frozen chicken or whatever. We can't, you hear like these stories where you call an RV dealership and it's like, well, we'll get to it in 3 months.
Yeah.
We can't do that. We'd bankrupt people. I mean, they have payments on these trucks. So our shop, most truck dealers have that mentality, and we track what's called dwell time. where from the time a truck hits our door to the time it's out, it has to be out in 48 hours.
Awesome.
So that same mentality kind of plays into, and most truck dealers do that, and that mentality just kind of plays into those shops. So those guys know they got to come in and out.
Well, we'll definitely be using here with closeness.
For sure.
That's why we're buying here.
And that just keeps you in mind, like, just the RV world is just a whole nother type of person.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say nothing bad, but there's just the speediness. It's like, oh, it's some guy's recreational toy. We don't need to hurry. You do have a jump start stud down here. The reason they have that on the Freightliner chassis is because you know they don't know what they're going to build on this truck, so the batteries could be stored somewhere hard to get to. So they give you a remote access point, but you can easily get to your batteries in the bay for direct hookup.
So again, hook it to the positive there.
Yep.
And if I had a jump box as an example,
there's a negative post here too.
Oh, positive and negative post.
But that's just like a standard feature from Freightliner, because you don't, like, we could be building an ambulance on this and they took the batteries up between the rail and they'd be hard to get to.
Got it.
So that's why they had, you know, it's there if you need to use it, but you can also get your batteries in the bay.
So perfect. I got a jump box for my diesel, then it would just poke
and
in.
another thing what's good about the jump box is if you're, by some chance, you accidentally draw your batteries down really low on the coach, the charger will not charge, don't quote me on this, but let's just say in theory, will not charge batteries that are below 5 volts. It's a safety thing, because it could potentially think that the batteries are bad and just overcook them trying to get them to charge back up. And so with your jump box, what you can do is when you hook up to shore or have your generator wouldn't fire up because your batteries are dead. But say you're hooked up to shore, it's not actually going to start charging the battery system because the voltage is so low. You can put your jump box on there to just trick it to think it's got 12 volts, and it'll start charging. And then you can pull your jump box back off, and it'll still continue to charge.
Okay.
Like I said, you've got your other side view camera over here. Of course, LED headlights on 2023. You can see your windshield wiper fluids, easy to get to, translucent. Of course, air filter. Air filter could potentially go more than a year. I just make sure that I'd have it checked. You know, we can visually look at one and be like, oh, it's fine. And a lot of that will come down to where you go. Yeah. You know, if you're doing you go up to the UP of Upper Michigan and you're on those gravel roads going all the different things, yeah, you're going to pick up more dust.
Right.
Same thing with the generator. I mean, the more dusty roads you do, the more air, dirt, and soot you're good. It's early in the morning. The more dust and stuff you're going to suck up. This coach is, so you got 100 gallons of fuel. It's dual 50-gallon straddle tanks. You need to fill both tanks at the same time. Now, it does have an EquiFlow system, which is just for weight distribution. And basically, to simply explain that, is when the engine draws fuel out of your tanks, it draws more fuel than it actually needs. And then it evenly splits that back to the tanks on the return. And by doing that, it evens them out. And that's it's not designed to move large amounts of fuel, it's just to keep them balanced. So you definitely want to fill both tanks every time you do. And people go, well, what if I have to like one time? I was like, you trying to tell me at 800 miles you can't find a diesel fuel station? You know? Yeah. But it's obviously worst case scenario to get somewhere. If you got a quarter tank here and you put a full tank on the other, I mean, but that's not ideal.
Got it. Good to know.
Let's see. Of course, your Girard awning. If there was anything that we had common issues with on the motorhomes, was the Carefree awnings back when they were using them. They would just get out of adjustment and hang up, which we could get them adjusted. We've had great luck out of the Girard awnings for several years now. One of the things you can look at in your book, and I don't know it off the top of my head, is there is a spot up there to stick like a ratchet where you can manually crank it in. So for whatever reason, you had an electrical issue, you've had your awning out and it won't come in, you can manually, it's something you might want to look into as far as what tool it takes. Yeah. So you have that ability to manually crank it in. I haven't heard stories where a bunch of people have had to crank them in, but that's one of the tools I would make sure is in my toolbox.
Well, and definitely want to understand how to manually crank in a slide too. That's something we'll talk about in a few minutes, if that's okay.
We'll get to that side. I'll talk about that one and on the other side.
Perfect.
So you can hear you have this front box here, which has got your inverter in it, which is also what is charging your battery system. You can hear it running now.
What size inverter? 2,000, 3,000?
3,000 watt inverter.
Got it.
And it is a hybrid inverter, so meaning that if you are hooked, say you go to a friend's house, you're visiting somewhere in the country, and you're only hooked up to a 15 amp to keep your fridge and stuff running. Let's say you kick on your microwave, the inverter will actually kick on to supplement the energy that's needed to run. Because the first time I came across that, and it didn't dawn on me, was I turned on a microwave. I was trying to test a kick a breaker for somebody on one we were working on. And I had a tea kettle going, a microwave going, and it was like nothing was tripping. And I was like, I'm melting something somewhere, and it was because the inverter was kicking in to supplement the energy needs. The key thing about this battery box is this can put off a lot of heat. I would not put beach towels and blankets and rugs and stuff in here. If anything, this is a good spot to put like a toolbox or something, or bins where air can still move around it. So
Good.
That's
Great advice.
Yeah, and you can, like, the Facebook forum for the Renegade thing is awesome. I mean, like, there's guys where they'll put these sliding trays in here where they can slide out a toolbox.
Yeah, I've thought about that.
Yep, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. Of course, your exterior TV, they now use a sound bar, which I think is way better than the old style 2 speakers and a radio. Because if that ever has an issue, it's a couple screws and a couple wires, and you can upgrade it to whatever you want.
And then all these bays,
Oh, some dirt.
all these bays below are one key opens everything.
Yep.
Okay.
Most of your bays on the campsite of the coach are going to be open for storage, just because this is the side of the coach that you're living on the most and not the utility side. Those are your slide locks, so when you're traveling down the road, they would go up between the slide and the wall, which I can show you inside. The problem, you gotta be careful about slide locks. They'll slide, like the motor that drives that big slide out is geared super low. So, and you can run your slides out from outside with your cell phone. So if you forget that you got slide locks in there, you'll tear it up real fast, and it'll push right through.
Yep.
That's an airline Renegade supplies you with. In the battery box on the other side, you actually have an air chuck where you can inflate your tires and stuff. It's worth noting too, one neat thing that Renegade does that a lot of manufacturers don't is this is a dual latch point, so it keeps the door nice, closed real firm, so you don't get like dust and water debris blowing up in your box. And then it's also adjustable and not just strictly welded. So you know these seals will compress over time.
Right.
And the easiest way to know that is you can see the line on the door where the dirt does, you know, right below the seal. You can see kind of where the line creates on that seal. If the seal is not getting a nice tight seal, you'll see like this little.
You see a gap.
You'll see like this little dirt spray.
Yeah.
You'll see it on the door where it's getting up between the door and the gap, and it'll tell you like, oh, I'm getting like maybe tighten my hinge up a little bit.
And I guess it's probably typical to lock these every time you're going to really be driving.
Yep. So anytime I've done my fair share of ripping stuff off of motorhomes, personally my own. So, you know, I'm very a huge advocate of if I'm going to move an RV, I walk from corner to corner, and I look all the way across underneath. I don't assume that jacks have come up. I don't assume, it's just not worth tearing something up. Especially like these doors are super awesome because they swing out, and so you can like walk up here and like work in your box. You know, you got the RVs that got the swing up doors, and they're a pain. You know, you're doing all this like trying to get underneath there. The downside being this is 4 foot
Right.
sticking out, so you need to be very diligent about checking that kind of stuff. Within the last couple of years, Renegade started doing the cut under boxes underneath the rail, so that allows just for deeper storage.
Yeah, that's great.
And chairs.
Yeah, versus a Class A that's going to be all the way through, and a lot of times.
Right. So one of the biggest advantages to a Class A bus is the fact that most of them have pass-through storage, and that's because your engine's in the rear. You have a short drive shaft that goes from there to here,
Right.
and you've got nothing other than a generator in the front, so they can do all that pass-through storage. But you know, I've had several people come and trade in a Class A bus, and I usually tell people, you know, we'll park one here and then we'll switch them, you know, one forward, one back, door to door, and move their stuff over, and every person says the same thing. I didn't think we'd have enough room, and then, or it's like, I got crap I don't need to put in there. You know, because over time they just you pile so much stuff in your motorhome you never use.
And is there do you have a designated pressure? Or I mean, obviously you can get the pressure setting off the tires here of how much should be in the tires.
So I tell people, you know, around 100. Now, You can get on the website, like for the tire manufacturer, and then based on the weight, you can, did I see? You could probably get down to like 80 PSI. We can double check on the tire specs.
Right.
Based on the weight.
Okay.
Because obviously, you're gonna
change your ride a little bit, but you're saying a good rule of thumb.
Most of them we run at 100 for
good rule of thumb, front and back at 100.
Whether it be truck or RV, for a vehicle of this weight, we run right around 100, 105. Now, if you want to bring that down some, we could just double check some stuff with the numbers of the weight of the vehicle to the tire specs, and that give you a little bit softer ride, which is going to spread your tire out a little bit better.
Right.
You just want, it's one of those things. You've got a tire pressure monitor, so that's something you can kind of start with a number and just kind of see what it does, how much it comes up and whatnot.
Perfect.
It really personal preference,
right?
Because it's going to change your ride.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, you've got a rear. So that bay, and then you've got this rear bay. Of course, this is 36 VSB, so the last bay on it is a little bit shorter than what you see on like a 40-footer. And then there's all the Renegades come with your hitch and your pin that go in the rear.
And is that a 2 5/8 inch ball on one side, or
2 5/8 and a 2?
Okay.
Two 2 5/16
Oh, really? Huh. Oh man, I'll have to look at that. I think my trailer's different size.
Of course, your rear fiberglass cap on the Renegades, they do the nice feature where the bottom fiberglass piece is a completely separate piece, because odds are if you back into something or get hit by somebody, they're going to destroy these back corners, and you're just replacing that small piece of fiberglass versus a lot of your big A buses are all one piece fiberglass. So if you bust that, you're replacing that giant piece of fiberglass. 3-inch receiver, 20,000 pound tow. This is your Voyager camera plug back here for your, if you have a camera on a trailer, so whether it be in a trailer for some people if they have like horses, or on the back of a trailer if you just want to see behind it. And then of course your 7-way plug.
So I have a 25-foot flat tow equipment trailer that I will probably put a vehicle on at times as well, Kyle. And if I plug in my 7-plug prong to that, then I'll have my electric brakes will work.
Yep.
Okay. And then as far as, we'll do a little bit of a segment here shortly on how to hook up the Air Force One, because with the help of you gave me, I have an Air Force One system on here.
Yep.
So I want to be able to flat tow another.
That's what this is. That's where Brian hooked up your place for your cable for your airline on the Air Force.
Yep. We'll go through that in a second. Perfect.
Generator exhaust port. They put it, Renegade was smart enough to run that to the back of the coach so that when you're camped somewhere, you don't have exhaust coming up around your slide. Because, it's sealed pretty good, but it's not airtight. It has to be able to move back and forth. Your 50 amp cord, of course it's on a power retract. Your transfer switch. Transfer switches on RVs are generator priority, so anytime the generator is running, that is where your power is coming from. That's a nice feature because you want to run your generator once a month. So let's say that you've got this hooked up at home and you want to fire your generator up or somewhere, you can actually put a load on it without having to unplug everything.
And is that a normal 110 outlet in that bay as well below?
It is, yeah. It's just a 110 outlet, so you have power back here if you need to use a tool or do something.
Is there any other bays that have a 110 out, like if you want to plug in electric refrigerator on the other?
Let me see. I think this one. Yep. So this one right here behind your coach door's got a 110 up here.
Okay, perfect. So it'll be great to plug in a.
And you got a port over there. So like if you were, you got your tailgate with a TV or something like a big TV or whatever, you can run that cord out a port and not have to close your door.
Yep. Perfect.
Your one thing that confuses some people, just so you know, it's a 50 amp power cord, but it's on 50 amp. You've got two 110 lines that are coming into the coach. Each of those lines is 50 amps, so you're actually getting 100 amps, which is a ton. because you've only
So this also can run off 30 as well, but you just can't run all the appliances that are associated.
correct. So if you use the dog bone from a 50.
Yep, I saw that in there.
Yeah. So if you run the dog bone from a 50 to a 30, you're only feeding one line 30 amp. Now the coach will, and I'll show you inside. The Firefly system will know that it's not hooked up 50 amp because it only sees one live line,
Right.
and it will assume that it's a 15 amp line because it doesn't know the difference between this being a 50 amp or a 30 amp, a 20 amp, a 15 amp. So it's always going to assume the worst, and then you can manually change that.
Yep. And then with 30 amp, I can run one AC likely, but not both.
Right, you'll have to bump up your in the Firefly system. You have to bump it until it's on a 30 amp.
Okay, got it.
Usually, when you go to like a dog bone, like your refrigerator, charging systems, a few outlets, some key components will still work. 8,000 watt on-end generator. This, you're going to want to service this at 50 hours for the first initial break-in, and then every 150 hours after that. Obviously, on like the air filter and stuff like that, the more you run this driving down the road, the more potential you have for it sucking up more debris and dirt and dust. So you may, if you're doing that a lot, some people will probably use their generators. Some people wear them out. It just depends on their style of what they do and where they're going. So but this generator is good for 10,000 hours at least. So, but the maintenance is key.
Yep. And start it from inside, or if it's not starting, you got a manual. Looks like you got a manual toggle there.
You can start it. So, you hold down your stop button,
right,
and then that'll prime the fuel system, and then you hold the start button, and then you just hold it until it starts.
Yeah.
The colder it is outside, or the longer it's been since you've used it, it'll just take. I get the phone call pretty often, like, "Carl, my generator doesn't start." Oh, it did. I was like, "Hey, my generator started." I was like, "Just hold the button longer."
Yeah.
Like, okay, it fired up.
So, quick question: if for boondogging outside somewhere, we don't have shore power hooked up.
Yeah.
We can run off generator. But talk to me a minute about solar or the lithium batteries. Can I set overnight somewhere with the lithium batteries and run both my ACs all night?
No. So the air conditioners to run, basically, as far as like generator and shore power, you're going to need generator shore to be able to run your air conditioners and your dryer. Everything else you can run off your battery system and in your inverter. So there's guys out there who have set up their RVs where they can run their air conditioner all night on batteries. The one I saw on Renegade, I think the guy spent, because you need quite the battery bank.
Right.
And I could we could talk details of wattage and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, you're talking between solar and that kind of battery bank. I mean, I think I saw like 32,000 or something like that.
Okay.
You can spend a chunk of change. Yeah.
So it's anything.
My theory is, unless you are only going to go boondocking on the rim of the Grand Canyon and you don't want to ever run a generator, that's a lot of diesel fuel.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Anything's possible, right? Money and time.
Oh yeah.
So, but I'm just trying to get a perspective because on the forum I've seen some of the same thing, and I saw some of the same kind of numbers of like people are paying $20,000 in order to be able to boondock, with solar but to your point, if I'm driving along and I go park in a Bass Pro Shop or a Cracker Barrel overnight, flip the generator on, use a little diesel fuel.
Yep. And another thing to keep in mind too, so I've got a diesel generator on my coach, but I have a 3500 Mercedes chassis, so it's not built near as heavy. This floor is 8 inches thick, which has got a wool grade insulation material, which has a high sound deadening factor. I don't know if you've heard one. I think we fired one you heard last time. You'll be surprised how quiet this generator is.
Yeah.
It's not obnoxious.
Yeah, I don't think we ever started it. We made a minute,
so you'll be really impressed.
Yeah.
Because of all this insulation in the floor, it does an awesome job of absorbing a lot of that sound.
Yeah. Well,
like if it was running right now, other than being inside, like we could stand here and have a conversation.
Yeah. Our other one, we had it on our trailer too, and we ran it of a night or slept inside with it on into it of a night. It wasn't something that was obnoxious.
Yeah.
Yeah. This would probably be quieter.
But like on the one, like on my coat, it's there.
Yeah.
This would be it'll be a quiet hum inside.
Yeah. Cool.
So of course, this is your control bay. Here's your sewer hose, which that doesn't have the fitting on it to be able to like hook into because if you go to like a RV park, they're gonna want you to hook up into their sewer and have a closed sealed, so you're not leaving like gases for people to smell and stuff. But if you're just going to like dump at a dump station, this hose works perfectly fine.
That stinky, slinky kind of hose.
Yep, for sure.
So let me ask, while we're talking about this business side of things here, what sewer hose do you recommend? I've seen a couple of different versions. Obviously, there's some different name brands out there. There's some.
Yeah, I mean the Kimco stuff, like the Rhino hoses and stuff, are fine. I mean I've never had a problem with any of them.
Yeah, I've also seen some that have a different kind of cam lock on them. And I've seen some that and I realize this comes with a macerator, I've seen some that are more of a 5/8 inch garden hose that come with a bit of a water infused macerator on it.
Yep.
And then it obviously drains slower.
Yep.
But the benefit of that is, you can not necessarily get your hands.
Because of it already having a macerator on the toilet side and the speediness, I would personally just use your typical stinky slinky to dump on this RV. Now, where I could see the advantage of the 5/8 hose with like a pump and macerator like down here in this bit, because you can add it, would be if you're parked wherever you park this at home, and you want to be able to dump it home into like a sewer clean out or something at your house. And let's say the closest you can get your RV to it is 50 foot or 100 foot.
Yep.
Then I'd be like, it'd be nice to have that, and you can buy this portable macerators too.
Right.
So having that ability to dump out your tanks at home and pump it like a distance is where I would see the benefit of that, but not really for just daily.
Okay. So the Camco hose.
Yeah.
Now I've also seen another hose that comes with instead of the typical push on and twist lock, they have a fitting almost like a fire hose, to where
I don't know if I've seen those.
You have.
So it's got a lever that clamps it together.
It does. And maybe we talk about that in a minute offline. But you have to remove the nubs on your coach in order to get that fitting to push over and clamp down like a fire hose.
Look it up.
Okay.
I haven't had any problems out of the Camco hose.
Yeah, I just know. Obviously they're kind of a 1 or 2 year kind of thing, and then you switch them out, or you end up getting holes in them, and then. So, okay, that's good. I appreciate that advice. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted your...
No, you're fine. This is just casual conversation. So, you've got your sea level 2 tank monitoring. So, it's got your battery fresh gray and black down here, so you can see that as well, which feeds inside the coach into the Firefly. Of course, this is your hose that you use for your fresh water. This hose goes straight...
And that hose is going to hook right up to the hose bib at the campground. I'm assuming you suggest to put like a pressure regulator on those in something that's probably not more than 40 psi.
Yeah, and that's plenty of regulation. This hose goes straight into this line, which has got a shut off right here, which then goes through this, which is where your whole house water filter is located. This filter is in a drawer inside. So when you go to unwinterize. What we do when we PDI this unit, we test everything on everything, hot water, heating, AC, everything. And what we do is, so we don't want to use your filter that's new, we'll put an inline filter at our source at the wall, so we're not just pumping dirty. Some people are very particular about their water, so we are very careful here to always filter what we put into the coach.
Sure. Now, is the unit currently winterized?
It is. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we usually winterize them back, and we're getting luckily close to that time of year we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right.
You got a spigot here, which this is just a water hose. This is your filter wrench for taking your filter off. Low point drain, and then of course your black tank dump, gray tank dump, black tank wash. That's something you might do a couple of times a year just to rinse the tank down. You just hook a water line up to it, and then your outside cable. Like if you're at an RV park and they've got cable hookup for whatever TV service. And then what's really nice about the Renegades is it's very simple. And when you're hooked up to city water, you're either doing one of two things. You're doing a tank fill or you're running off of city water. It's just a matter of flipping it one of two positions.
So just for clarity here, for maybe the folks that are watching or participating in the city water, again, flip the arm up. That's when I'm going to have that hose hooked to the hose bib.
Then it goes straight to your fixtures.
And then I've got pressure all the time. If I'm just tank filling only, talk to me about that.
Yeah, so all you would do is just flip it down the tank fill, hook this up to city water. Now you can watch your levels to see how much water you have in the tank. Of course, your tanks are located underneath the bed, so you could actually physically look at them. Or they got overflows on them. So once the tank gets completely full, I mean, you'll hear water hitting the ground underneath the coach.
Right. And then give me a little more maybe substance on the process of dumping the black and gray tank. So again,
so on your black tank, you know, so what I tell people is, okay, the coach is dry right now, so you would first start off when you go to unwinterize. I'd add 3 to 5 gallons of water to the tank, just right off the bat. Put whatever chemical you're going to put in it, which on the Renegades is not necessarily as much for odor because it's a macerator toilet that pumps it to the tank. So it's not like your traditional toilet in the RV where you open up the valve and it just dumps straight into a black tank and you get kind of odor. It's one nice thing about those macerators, there's so no odor. But you still want to put a chemical in there because it's got bacteria that break it down even more. So when you go to dump, it's just a black water versus got any kind of chunk to it. And then what I recommend is that, you know, you put 3 to 5 gallons of fresh water in there, and then, you know, go to about half a tank on your black if you can, and then be ready to dump, because it'll just dump a lot easier and clean, and it gives that black time to slosh around and break down. You never want to leave your black tank open, just open all the time. You always want whatever material is going in there to go into a water or a slurry so that it's not sticking to the tank, because then you get what's called the poop pyramid. Yeah. So then you always, you know, dump your black tank first, and then anytime I know that I'm going, you know what, tomorrow I'm probably going to be dumping my black tank, I'll like, okay, when I know I'm going to take a shower in the morning, I'll kind of close off my gray tank if I'm hooked up somewhere with, like, for city hookup, city sewer. I'll close my gray tank and let my gray tank build up.
So you have some water to flush it.
So that when I dump my black, I can follow it with that gray tank, which is soapy dishwater and shower water, and just help clean that line out. And by the time you do all that, your line's pretty clean.
But the actual port that you attach to is in the next,
So what I recommend doing here is, looks like we have a little bit of water left in that thing. Or it's from washing, I'm not sure. But you put your bayonet here to attach your hose, and then you can unscrew that bottom cap so that whenever you take that off there, nothing's dribbling on the ground. But what I actually personally recommend doing is you can buy a Camco. They make them in like 3-inch, 5-inch, 7-inch, 9-inch, clear piece of pipe that'll attach right on there, and then put you a 2-foot pipe, 2-foot like. Camco actually makes like a heavy duty version so that it doesn't wear as easy, and then put a 2-inch or a 2-foot slinky onto that, and then put a cap on it and leave that in the bay, so that when you go to dump your sewer, all you gotta do is unscrew that cap and drop that hose out of that port, so that when you're unscrewing it to hook your line to it, it's all outside the coach and not inside the bay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. In the event of any spill or anything,
you're outside the coach at that point.
Yeah, you're just putting a bit of an extension on there to get to this other open port.
Yeah, so you can it's flexible, so you can pull it out and drop it down through there, and whatever dribbles out, because you'll probably get dribble no matter what, is that it'll be on the ground and not inside the bay itself. And you're not messing with this port, because this port is kind of hard to screw in and out with it being right underneath that pipe. It's functional, but it is difficult. It's not the easiest thing in the world.
Right. Okay. Yep. There's this.
And it's just one less thing to do.
Second port. Yep. That's great advice. And then you actually have a visible indicator here as well.
Well, it just shows you your sensors. I don't know if it actually. It might light up. I'm not sure. The sea level stuff's only new within the last year.
Okay.
And I haven't really. I don't have coaches sitting around here with tanks of water in them, so I haven't actually seen what it does.
But that is the black tank. I'm only because
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, black and gray.
Black and then gray.
Yep, and then the one thing we have had come up, which is more of a maintenance thing, is these are your pull handles. And see how when I push it in, it kind of springs back.
Right.
Well, that tells me that the gate is fully closed.
Okay.
But with time, that cable can get out of adjustment, and the handle would or this nut back here will back out some. you know, if it bottoms out before it gets a chance to close all the way, you'll get like a little bit of seepage through the pipe.
Got it.
One, you know, screwing this nut back closer to the handle itself so that you're getting a nice full closure.
Yep.
Or if you look in here, so this is the pin that it's pushing in.
Uh-huh.
And so if you ever have concerns about, like, I don't know if it's closing it all the way. Well, you can come in here and you can push this closed. It's not that hard.
Yeah. And you can adjust it with like
and then right here you got a set screw.
Right.
And then so if that handle is bottoming out on you, like this cable is stretched or compressed over time, you can pull that set screw out, back your cable up just a hair, and then put your set screw back in.
Makes a lot of sense.
I've done that a lot for customers.
Yep. So, quick reminder, the black and gray tank is how large, gallons-wise?
75 gallons for both.
75 gallons. And the fresh water again for folks?
150.
Okay.
And it's 2 75-gallon tanks. The reason they do that is for slosh. Just cuts down the slosh in the tanks. So
Makes
they don't
sense.
have all that weight shifting.
Yeah.
Because it's 150, 800, 1,200 pounds.
Yeah. So the blue hose self-coiling is basically, if I just want to wash something off outside or whatever, I can just stretch that hose out here and do a quick wash or something.
Just a water hose. And then this is your exhaust pipe for your aqua hot system because it's got a diesel burner. That's your exhaust pipe for your main diesel engine. It's got a diffuser on it because when it regens, it can create quite a bit of heat.
Okay.
So it just disperses the heat.
And that water hose will work whether my lever is turned to city water or tank fill. I'm assuming it
now, if you're on tank fill, you're going to have a water pump running to get water pressure. But
yes.
But they'll all work.
Yeah. Okay. And then as far as you indicated earlier, a great feature that the coach comes with, and that is the black tank wash.
Yep.
That's something where I hook the water hose up to. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then it'll actually push water in from an outside.
And then it's got a sprayer in there that sprays the tank down.
Okay. So it actually has an inside sprayer that sprays itself. But I would use a different water hose that I would provide for that exercise.
And a lot of times people would use a dedicated, like they make an orange hose, like hey, this is a dirty hose.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people will use a dedicated hose.
Yep, I have something like that for my other one for that, just to make sure that I don't have any contamination.
Here's your AquaHot 250 system, which it's your heating and your instant hot water. There's a lot of complaints on the internet about them, and it all comes down to service at the end of the day. So anything that uses diesel as a burner and as a source of fuel, whether it be the generator, the main engine, AquaHot system, it's a gummy fuel. You got to use those systems. So the biggest thing you can do for yourself here is that once a month, if the coach is going to stay parked for a period of time, if you're traveling or work related or whatever it may be, is to go out and use it for half an hour once a month to let burn some fuel through it. Don't service this at the end of the year. When you're getting ready to put it in storage for 2 months in January, December, service it before you go on a trip. Our dealership will be AquaHot certified by mid-May. I also know another guy that's not too far from here that's AquaHot certified. So, and that's the key thing about the AquaHot systems is I actually watched a guy service one at the Renegade Rally in Tennessee last year, and he'll tell you it's not rocket science, but you got to know what you're doing. Like, it's something you could probably teach yourself to do.
Right.
But you just don't get in there with tools. And
gotta set all the ports right.
And I'm going to figure this out. This is not how AquaHot works. So, and when you go to a dealership that's AquaHot certified, it's good to ask. Like, our dealerships, we're training 3 people. But my whole dealership is going to be AquaHot certified. So in theory, I could put any technician on the job and still be, I'm still an AquaHot certified dealer. So which we're not going to do this. So that's why you need to ask when you go to dealership, like, is the guy working on my AquaHot, the AquaHot certified technician that does the actual training?
Yeah.
That's a good question to ask.
Great. So I see a cold and hot water line there incoming in. What are some of the other things that I see?
So you got your glycol in here, which is, the AquaHot system uses a glycol, which is pumped. It heats it, and it is pumped through the radiators throughout the coach, which we can find one to show you, which is what creates your heating system. It's got like little fans that blow the air across those radiators, which then gives you a nice. The coolest thing about AquaHot, as far as the heating system goes, is fairly quiet, and it creates a very even temperature. So if you took like a temperature sensor and held it up at the very top of the ceiling, or held it all the way down to the floor, the difference in temperature is like minimal.
Yeah.
Versus like a furnace system, you got all this heat at the top of your coach, and it's cool down at the bottom. Biggest thing on AquaHot, you cannot use air to winterize it, because inside of that system you've got a copper coil that spins around a burner, and if you try to blow air through it, it'll move some of the water out, but because there's just so much of that coil, it's going to blow that water back up to the top and then settle back to the bottom, and then you'll have this water sitting in the bottom of your copper coils. It'll freeze, it'll bust it, cost you $10,000. There is no replacing it. Like, there's no fixing the copper coil. It's a brand new AquaHot unit. So it's very important to actually pump glycol through the system. When your AquaHot system is winterized for like using it as your hot water source, you can still use it for heating. And then back on the back, the AquaHot system also has a fuel filter itself.
Okay, so as an example, should I carry some glycol with me?
I would. Yep, because with this system, and I can't guarantee what it'll do or won't do, but it's very possible that the system will burp. And if the glycol gets too low, it'll keep it from functioning.
So I can just buy that locally here?
We don't have any here. I don't think we have any right now. But the best thing to do is to buy the pre-mixed stuff off the internet or something.
Okay.
Just carry some with you.
And then the fill there is right there inside this bay, is that right? At the top?
Yeah, the AquaHot here. And of course, I mean, I'm a honest, straightforward person.
That's a hard to get to spot.
It's not the easiest thing to get to. I mean, the best thing to do here would be to get like one of those
pumps,
like a drill pump, like a $15 drill pump, or one of them syringe type larger. People that use it, like when I change oil on my tiller, I stick it down and I have to draw the oil out,
right,
and then pump it back in. But yeah, to be able to do that by hand, that's not going to be done by hand.
Yeah.
Like with a jug, you're going to have to get something to transfer the fluids.
But again, as you talked about the engine service, you recommend probably once a year on this, but probably do it in
if you haven't used that AquaHot system for 3 months at all, and you're going to go on a trip that you've been dreaming about for half a year, service your AquaHot.
Okay. But if we have this thing stored at home and we go out there and we start it up and let it run for 30 minutes every month, then that
Yep, and you'll know. Or if you got a trip coming up and it's, just do yourself a favor and, go out there 2 weeks beforehand just to be on the extra safe side to run it. Because if it's not functioning correctly, you'll know. I mean, it'll put black marks on the ground because it'll burn dirty and nasty, and it's putting out soot, and you'll know.
Okay.
It's not working like it should.
Okay. So, as an example, if I want heat in the coach, I can use my AquaHot system to heat the coach with and to get hot water. But if I'm also want to heat in the coach, I could turn on either one of the two HVAC systems because they have heat pumps. Because that's another alternative source for heat inside as well.
Correct. So, like what I would do, the AquaHot system full tilt, I mean, running as hard as it can, will only burn 0.4 of a gallon of fuel per hour. So it's pretty conservative. And it's the quietest, best way to heat your coach, by far. Now, the Renegades are super well insulated. So if you're camped somewhere with electric, I mean, the heat pumps are nice, they're there and you can use them. If you're hooked up to electric somewhere, you can use those. But 50 degrees is about the best they're about good for. Below that, they just have a hard time keeping up. But with the Renegades being so well insulated, if you don't want to use fuel and save your money, I personally would recommend getting like a small tabletop space heater, just to once you get the coach to whatever temperature you want it to stay at, get you one of those that's got like a thermostat on it.
Right.
Believe it or not, that little heater will maintain the temperature. Because this was outside yesterday in the morning, and then brought it in like lunchtime. Just pulled it in and parked it. Came in here at like 6 o'clock last night into this RV. It was still cold, in like a refrigerator. I mean, it's amazing how well insulated they are. So it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't dual pane windows, so that helps with thermal value. The fact that the walls are 2-inch thick, it's closed cell foam. I mean, they're 8-inch thick floor. I mean, they'll hold their temperature.
Okay. So
here's your battery compartment. Up here, to the top left back there is your air connection. You can see it way back.
Sure. I see the chuck back there. Yep.
That is, of course, your chassis batteries for starting the main diesel engine, and then you have your 3 100 amp hour lithium batteries. The lithium batteries, you know, they've gotten to the point now where they're cost effective because they may be more money, but you get a larger depth of discharge. So on the lead acid battery, you can use about 40% of that battery's capacity. You can easily use 90% of this battery's capacity. So if this battery was rated for 100 amp hours and this battery was rated for 100 amp hours, you're getting a lot more use out of this 100 amp hours because of the lithium technology. The biggest downside to lithium for the longest time was lithiums are picky little suckers when it comes to temperature. So they don't like to charge below 30 degrees and they don't like to function below 0. Well, of course, most of these RVers aren't going, they like 70-degree weather, but if you're like to ski or do winter activities, you go out west in the mountains, you can get in cold weather. This right here, this wire right here, is the internal heater.
Okay.
Now, what's really cool about the new lithium batteries is the original batteries with internal heaters were they were heated or not heated, and a lot of them just had either a thermostat with a switch that just said heat the battery, or you put a manual switch that you just sit here and flip to heat them if it was going to be cold enough. Well, the cool thing about the newest batteries is they have a battery management system built into them with a thermostat. And so when they start to see 30 degrees, 25 degrees, 0 degrees, the battery will heat only to what is necessary. So instead of being 100% heated or 0% heated, it actually has like variables in between so it conserves your energy. So a lot of times when it's heating that battery, it's using like an amp. So it's very, because that was like, well, I'm using my energy to keep a battery working, to use it, you know, so it sounds kind of like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But the new batteries are very efficient. So
life of the lithium batteries, and I realize there's no
10 years.
10 years, and then the house battery.
Most of them are warranted for 10 years.
Okay.
That house battery, 4 to 5.
Okay.
So the biggest, you know, the lithium batteries can handle being discharged down to next to nothing and not damage them. Lead acid batteries are not that way.
Right.
So if you constantly kill your lead acid battery down to nothing, so if you draw it down to 0, roughly, you go to charge it back up, it won't go back to 100.
Yeah, it won't charge the full.
Yeah, it'll go to 95. Then the next time you charge it to 0, it'll go to 90. So it just really depends on, like right now I have lead acid batteries in my coach that are 5 years old and they're strong. But my coach is always plugged in. I've never, that I know of, ever run those batteries down below 12 volts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it really comes down to how well you take care of your batteries.
Now, do you ever charge the lithium batteries? I see the disclaimer there on the inside of the door about if you're going to charge that, the disconnect switch must be on for the house battery.
You talking about like for keeping them charged?
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just reading the sticker on the inside of the door that says when charging lithium batteries in below freezing temperature, the house battery.
Yeah, so you know what? That's what I was talking about. So the only way those batteries can internally heat,
if they have a heater.
Well, so if you look, this wire for the internal heaters goes. If I can backtrack to where heck it goes, it is tied into here, which is controlled by the battery disconnect switch. So if you turn the battery disconnect switch off, they can't internally heat.
Okay.
So if they can't so another thing. So here's another thing too. Let's say you're not even trying to charge the batteries. Let's say that you've got your RV parked outside, or is your barn heated?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so let's say your barn's not heated, and so if it's going to be below freezing temperatures overnight, and you know that you're going to want to go do something with your RV the following day, if you have your disconnect off and these things get down to 0, you'll go out there and you turn the disconnect switch off, it's going to do all kinds of funky stuff.
Okay.
I mean, the lights are going to flicker and it may not even come on.
Okay.
Because they'll be frozen.
Okay.
So that's why it's ideally on a coach, if you own something like this, you never want to have to turn the disconnect switch off for your coach. In reality, you should always have some form of charge, like whether it be a 15 amp from an outlet in your barn, or if you get the luxury of having a 50 amp plug. you should really never turn that plug up, because you want the coach to be able to live in its own world. Like the refrigerator, it's a residential refrigerator. I would leave it on.
Yeah.
I would put cases of water in there, and I mean, people are like, oh, I want to conserve my fridge. I'm like, you gonna plug your fridge in your kitchen? I mean, how many decades has that thing been?
Yeah.
So I mean,
and the hour meter right there is really.
So this is your Victron energy monitor.
Okay.
You can connect to this via Bluetooth. You can download the app. And what's really nice, lithium batteries are hard to measure because, just like a power tool, lithium batteries don't really have a voltage droop. So they'll hang out there at that 13.6 right now, but they'll hang out at that like 13.6 voltage and just stay there as you use them. And so typically, like on a lead acid battery, you could put a voltmeter and say, okay, it says it's 12.1 volts. That's roughly 50%. Lithiums, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So the only way to really accurately know what you have left in a lithium battery is to use a monitor like this to track how much energy is going in and how much energy is coming out, and that will give you, like right now we're drawing no amps, and we hold on here, there's no amps going in. 13.9 amps is coming out, and we're at 95.6%. 0.16 amps. Well, minus 13.9. So you can see, and then the app, if you download it, shows you even more data. It'll give you like a graph of a history.
But the ideal setting there would be, we would want to be looking for is the that's how charged the batteries is at 95.6.
Yeah, they're 95.6% right now. Yep.
And then roughly 14 amps.
Yeah, they're holding it at 13.63. They charge at 14 something volts.
Okay, got it.
Because the different types of batteries, whether it be lithium, lead acid, AGM, they all have different charging profiles, which is why, like, this is getting super technical at this point, but like this is your battery monitor, battery management isolator. And so what that does is one side of this is your coach battery, this side is your house battery. This is designed for lithium battery bank. It has a thing that tells it that it's got an ignition source that the engine's running, and this is what manages charging the two different battery systems.
Got it.
And not keeping them tied together. So if you drain this battery down, it's not affecting this battery or vice versa. Or once this one's fully charged, it's not continuing to charge this one at the same time.
So you kind of lead me into the next question here. So if I happen to find myself where the coach will not start,
right?
What are my options? One is I could put a jump box on up here, right, and jump it there.
Or you can just do. There's an e-start function, probably by the door. I can show you where when you click it, it allows that battery isolator to tie the two groups of batteries together. And
it'll come off your lithium then.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Okay.
Your DEF fill, of course, your other fuel tank on the other side. The biggest thing about your DEF is one, when you're buying it. So the cheapest way to buy a DEF is going to be at the pump at a fuel station. If you buy it at a Lowe's or a Walmart or anywhere like that, just make sure it has the seal in it. Because people have been known to buy DEF, use it,
fill with water.
That will destroy your emission system. Another thing is just keeping it clean, because DEF is highly corrosive. I don't recommend really carrying a lot of DEF in the coach because DEF will freeze. If you drip any, just take water, splash it off. Yeah. Because you potentially, if you get those big, you'll drive by trucks, you get a big crystal mount,
Oh yeah.
And that can get down your tank and cause issues. It can get plugged up in one of your dosers or something like that. And so you just want to keep it clean and just keep it full.
I have to put DEF in my truck, so.
Now the biggest thing with the cold weather months is, let's say you pull in to you're parking your RV. You kick the ignition off, and then I hop down here, and I've got a battery disconnect switch right here for the cab. So I turn my key off, I hop down, crank my power disconnect off. Well, I have DEF still in the lines. So whenever you turn this key off, the DEF system will pull all the DEF back out of the lines, and that is so that the lines can't freeze. Because when you're in the winter months, that tank is heated. It's got a thermostat as well. Far as what was I going to say about that? Oh, the key thing, also about when you pull in somewhere, just as we're standing right here, whenever you pull in somewhere, you got oil that cycles through your turbos and stuff, which you're spending at 2,000 plus RPM. So when you pull in somewhere, and especially if you've been on like a hard pull, like pulling a trailer or vehicle or whatever, you know, let the engine idle for a minute before you cut it off. Just let the turbo spool down. One time is not going to destroy your turbo, but if that's your habit over the entire life of owning a vehicle, it will shorten your turbo lifespan. Turbos are not cheap.
Okay. You want to take a quick break before we...
And then block heater.
Okay.
Yep. So this, you know, engines today, I mean, even when it's single digits outside, you know, when you turn the key over, there's a light that'll pop up in cold weather that says like wait to start, and basically it's heating the air intake. There's a grid heater in there, which is why you cannot spray ether in there; it will blow up. And what I'll do, like in single digits, is I'll turn the key over and let it do the whole cycle, let the grid heater heat up, and then once I turn the key back off, and I'll do it again. Like the air heat up even that much more, and even in single digits, these new vehicles typically fire up.
Right.
I mean, if it's going to be cold and you want to plug it in, I mean, you can, like below zero, or if you just want to be on the extra safe side.
I'm pretty confident Lori and I aren't going to be anywhere it's below zero.
Yeah, well, you never know. I mean, especially go out west. I mean, you'll definitely have. I'm sure you guys have already done it. I mean, one day you're at 70 degrees in sunshine, and the next day it's 13 in the mountains.
We have. We've been in snow in July in Colorado before.
But that is, as far as outside, that's pretty much the whole coach.
Okay, that's great. Good job.
You know, the one thing I didn't mention, so you got, you know, that's your vent for your dryer, like so the heat coming out there, and then your the vent over here, that's for your microwave, like your stove. And it does, you know, to keep bugs and stuff out when you've got it parked in storage. It's latched closed. So if you are going to use that, there's little tabs. You just push those and pop that so that little vent can flip open. We keep them latched because if anything, there's two things you can hear on the coach rattling when driving, and that is the microwave components inside, the little glass dish and rack, and that little flap sitting out here banging on the side if you've got it open.
Okay, that's good.
But that's it.
Okay, well, I'm going to pause this then, and then we'll take a break and go inside.
So as we're coming into the coach here, you know, your steps come out. This is that battery disconnect switch, which is for cutting the power to the coach. Like I said, if you can create a way to never turn this off, we call them salesman switches because that's the only person that should ever use it. So, okay. I mean, you should be able to leave, I leave my coach power on all the time. You should be able to do the same, you know, if you've got power in your garage or if you're traveling or plugged in somewhere. I mean, it really should stay on. That way your batteries are internally heating as necessary and everything else is functioning. The fridge can stay on and all that kind of stuff.
So translation, Kyle, if when I pull into my barn, you're saying hook up my shore power and just let this thing sit there in its own little environment.
Literally, like you could walk out there and you could just turn lights on and TV and air, you know, whatever. If you got 50 amp air conditioners or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's perfect because I actually have a friend that lives in Colorado and he never winterizes his because he just sits it in his house and it plugs it up all the time and he leaves his awful hot running.
Having something you can use is so much better than to have something shut down just
sitting
there.
Just like a car that sits for a month and
you know, it's
you
like
get all kinds of problems with it.
I mean, my fridge is a 12 volt AC propane, and I even leave it. It's on the whole time. I never turn it off.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, that's good. Good advice.
This is your step override. So basically, you just flip this switch, and that way, when you're closing like you're at camp, and you're closing your door back and forth, the steps aren't pulling in and out. They'll just stay out.
Yep.
Now, if you do turn the ignition on, even with this switch on, the steps will still pull in just for a safety feature. And then that's your e-start button. If we click it, you heard that the solenoid clicked over and tied the two batteries together.
So again, that's in the state that I have a dead battery on the coach or on the house.
Either way, yep.
And I want to start the unit. That would be able to do it.
And then you heard it kick back off.
Right.
It's got a little delay there, but yeah. So basically, you know, if your house batteries are dead and you want to start up your generator, then you could tie them together and fire up your generator. Or if your coach is dead or your chassis is dead and you can't start the main engine for driving, you could tie them together and start the vehicle.
And I just toggle that, and it doesn't actually do the starting. It just just changes over.
Yeah, that's
tying them together, and then I go do whatever I need to do. And then when I get the coach starts or the generator starts, I come back and toggle it back.
No, it'll click off itself.
Got it.
Yep. And you've only got a little bit of a window there, maybe 20 seconds or something, and you'll hear that solenoid kick back over.
Okay.
So it doesn't give you a time, because that or you got to have a NASA operation with somebody holding the button here and doing something somewhere else. But it should give you plenty of time.
Any special instructions on the door? I mean, it's pretty standard there.
No, we haven't really had any. This is a newer style door. We had some issues with the previous door. Not that it wasn't fixable, but just requiring some adjustments and stuff so that we close a little bit better.
Yep.
The newer style door, we've had great luck out of.
And again, same key opens all the bottom bays, opens this door.
There's a different key for this lock. So you've got like basically 3 keys. You've got the keys that start the engine, you got the keys that operate the coach door, and then you've got the keys that operate all the bays below. And then, this is a typical RV lock.
Right.
So it's not, I can personally do this, so it's not rocket science. I'm not pretty talented, but I'm not a genius by any means. But there's a ton of different locks you could buy. Like if you want to get one that had a remote key fob or one that had touch button stuff on it, it's nothing.
I changed out the one on our trailer. I went from a manual one like that to one that was key coded.
A couple $100.
Yeah. But the 2 locks here, what's the...
One blocks the door handle,
yep.
like the ability for the door handle to come open, and then the top one up here is the deadbolt that comes across.
Got it. Okay, thanks for the extra clarity.
Can you lock it from inside?
Yeah.
Yeah, the top one does the lock. The top one does the deadbolt.
Gotcha.
And then you have a dog. I'm assuming your dog will travel with you. I would highly recommend a piece of plexiglass, like use double the command strips or Velcro, and Velcro a piece of plexiglass down here, just so that when you've got this open for fresh air, if it's my dog would destroy it, something for them to run into, not the screen. It's an idea. They may even make something. I know a lot of people just get plexiglass cut to the size, but they may even make something for the door.
Perfect.
So you've got over here, you've got your equalizer systems for your jack system, but that's also controllable through the Firefly system as well. So most of what you're going to do is going to be Firefly, but it does give you another point. Of course, your fire extinguisher required by law. This is your touch panel here. Now, what to know about these is this is basically a remote that sends a signal to the Firefly system on the wall over there. So anytime you hit one of these buttons, like all off or all on, it lights up green. The green light tells you that it successfully sent the signal to that control panel. This, you go up here and you kind of pull it down to the top and bottom. You can see, hold on, we were in here. But you can see that it's just got 12 volts going to it. The rest of it is completely wireless. One of the issues Renegade had at one time was they would put the one Firefly system there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were getting interference from the fridge. So any of the controllers that were on the other side of the fridge were to get like intermittent.
Right.
So they would work sometimes, and and they would quit working, and you bring it to me, and I'm like, dude, your switches work. Well, we learned it was interference from the fridge.
Sure.
So that gives you an idea, so that like these are all basically remote. If this had a battery in it, because some of them may have a battery in them, you could literally peel it and carry it around with you. Yeah. So it just gives you the concept of how that system works, because then that's what's hardwired into the control panel, which then sends the signals that turn stuff on, like your water pump, operate the slides, all your lighting and whatnot. Nice thing about the multiplex wiring is that no matter where you are on the coach, if you have lights on the back, you come up here, you hit all off, you're going out, everything closes, turns off. You hit all on, everything comes on. Of course, your awning controls and ceiling, anything that has up and down arrows is dimmable. So if I dim here,
ambiance.
Yep, and then if I hit all off and I hit all on, it returned to the exact same setting as far as the dimming. Now, if I hold, I know what I'm doing on that screen. This is actually a test. I have no idea if this works or not. If I hold it, returns to full brightness. I think it did.
Yeah, I feel like it did too.
On the Firefly screen, it definitely does that. If you hold the on button, it returns everything to full brightness.
Okay.
So then that controls that. So then we'll do cab last. But of course, TV, simple stuff. Sound bar, pull down your lever. It'll tilt. It'll pull out, and you can angle it and stuff like whatnot. Of course, all hardwood, maple cabinetry. This is your book that Renegade supplies you. The most helpful thing that's in here is your parts list. List everything, the component, the manufacturer, serial numbers. Stuff may have its own. Renegade is a 1-year warranty, some of the components like your fridge may be longer, so you can always call and maybe potentially do like a parts replacement only. I don't hear a lot of that, but I would check it before you went out and bought a new microwave or fridge if you do have an issue outside of the warranty.
And all those warranties are in there.
Yes, and all the books for everything are in there, and then there's also like a kind of a Renegade piece that they put in there that I'd recommend reading through, and it just talks about a lot of the just commonly known issues or stuff that may pop up, and just proper procedures. Like, for example, when you go to put slides out, Renegade wants jacks down first. So jacks down, slides out. Some RV manufacturers say put slides out, then jacks. They're the other way around, which makes more sense to me.
But so jacks down first, slides out.
If your slides are out, jacks need to be down.
Yeah.
That's basically just rule of thumb. Of course, the convection microwave. This is your entertainment center, which is what feeds that TV. You've got, of course, a Blu-ray player up here. There's power strip. If you put a satellite box or gaming system, you can connect into those cables, which will feed the TV over here. If you're hooked up, so your wine guard system on the roof, that little flat dish-looking thing that's got a flat top on it, that's your whole house Wi-Fi system and your over-the-air TV. If you're hooked up to cable TV at an RV park or somewhere, the antenna needs to be powered off.
Okay.
It will not let that signal through if it is powered on.
Okay.
And then this is what powers on your Wi-Fi. There's a book for the Wi-Fi system inside of there, and right there on there's a sticker that says what the SSID is for the Wi-Fi system, like the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like my house, it's the Cobra lines or something like that. It's going to be like WineGuard dash blah blah blah, and then whatever the default password is, and then you can log into that system and you can change it to whatever you want or leave it default.
Okay.
You can put
and while I'm going down the road, just for clarity, if I'm going down the road, I can get Wi-Fi off my hotspot on my phone.
Correct. Yep. You can use that Wi-Fi system as a booster, or you can add a SIM card to it. It depends on kind of where you're going to be and what you're going to do. The WineGuard system is nice, but if your cell phone works for you most of the time, I'd probably stick with that. There's another device called a Solus hotspot. I like it because I can put 20 gigabytes of data on it. It uses 135 different cellular carriers, and it doesn't expire. So if I pay $100 for 20 gigabytes, it lasts forever.
Right.
So I use it. So it's like for example, I was in North Carolina and my cell phone Verizon did not work. I powered up that hotspot. My wife was having some issues, and we may go to the emergency room and just have it checked out. And she was okay. But it's like the only way I was able to figure out which way to go for an emergency room was to pop up my Solus hotspot, and it got picked up T-Mobile or something. I don't know. But it gave me enough to be like, Google, here's where I go to get the emergency. So it was nice. It like right then and there, I was sold. Worth every penny. Have that backup. Sure. But then you got the Starlink stuff that people are using with the satellite. Those work awesome, but obviously you got to have a clear view of the sky. I'm a forest camper. I like being in the woods when I camp, so that would be kind of not the easiest for me. There's this new thing called a Nomad. That technology's evolving so fast. You just kind of have to get with everything.
Okay.
Of course, convection microwave. The vent underneath here does go to the outside.
And that's the vent we need to open if we're going to use that, and maybe you can give us a sidebar on.
It's a true induction cooktop, so you have to use special cookware. Some people know that, some people don't.
Right.
Now, the special cookware for induction can be used backwards compatible. Gas, you can put it on a fire pit if you want.
Right.
But it has to be the magnetic cookware for the induction cooktop. This will run off your inverter. This will run off your inverter. Literally, the only two things that won't run off your inverter is your HVAC units and the dryer.
Okay. Again, that's great information. So HVAC units and dryer will not run off inverter. Everything else in the coach will run off.
And like I said, if you hook up to a 15 amp somewhere, like if you go to visit a friend somewhere and they got a nice house, someplace you can just kind of plug in to keep your systems charged, and you do to go use this microwave, the microwave is going to pull close to 15 amps by itself. So you're like maxed out at that point. Well, what's nice about the hybrid inverters is, I got the microwave going, I got my TV going, and a few other things going. I'm drawing 25 amps. Well, the inverter will offset the extra 10 so that it doesn't cook the wires coming through. Because everything that's wired into the inverter, so the microwave, the cooktop, and all that kind of stuff, you got to think about the power cable goes straight to the inverter. And then what the inverter has power coming to it from the transfer switch. Well, actually it's coming from the breaker box. Power comes to the breaker box, and the breaker box sends it back to the inverter. But it's got power going to the inverter, which allows for pass-through. So if the inverter sees 110 coming from another source, it just lets it pass straight through without converting DC to AC. But everything's coming from that inverter. So that's how it can offset it. So if it's only getting so much, it can step it up from the inverter side.
So practical application, if I go to somebody's house and I back into their driveway, they don't have 50 amp, but they have a 110 plug sitting out there in their garage. I just hook my 110 plug up, go to the, get some kind of additional dog bone to go to the 30 amp or 50 amp, and then plug in my shore power.
Yep.
That's what you're saying.
Yep. And if you end up doing too much with that 15 amp, the inverter will help you out. It'll offset it so that nothing will get melted or fried or kick a breaker. Another thing too, anytime you're using those dog bones, you always want to use the actual dog bone, so where it's got like the 30 amp drop. Well, say in your case, I'd probably just go buy a 50 to a 15. Just get one bone that does it all. So so you already have a 50 to a 30. You got to get a 50 to a 15 just so you have it. And you always want to get to where it's got the 50 amp plug here with a wire in between and the 15 amp over here. Same thing with that 30, because anytime, never fails. You get the ones that are like a real short block where it's got the stud sticking out and then the female side. You got such a short distance there with connections, they get hot. Every one of them you look at with time, the little sockets look melted and warped and everything else. So you spread that heat up by using that dog bone.
Perfect.
So down here, so all your joints, of course, are soft close. It's that whole house water filter. Renegade does supply you with a can of CRC lubricant. This is what they recommend you use for everything. This is the only thing you need to maintenance your coach. When it comes to the rails on the outside of the slides, when it comes to underneath the slides, when it comes to the steps, when it comes to the jacks, lubing the cylinders at your point just to keep them lubricated. You want to lubricate the swivels on the bases of the seats. I mean, you literally use this for everything. It's a dry lube, that way it doesn't collect any dirt or grease. They supply you with touch-up paint.
Okay.
For down the road. You're going to get rock chips. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's going to happen.
Yeah. Yep.
You drive down the road enough. Of course, all your remotes, sound bar, TVs, Blu-ray player. This cabinet is where they've got, so you've got your roadside assistance number here. I recommend storing that somewhere else because you do have roadside assistance for the first year. I have gotten a phone call from customers that say I locked ourselves out of the coach and I don't know what the roadside assistance is. It's on the door inside the coach. So, yep, diagram for your Firefly system as far as all the 12 volt. It has your paint stuff here on the door. It's just for future reference because you can order paint stuff from Renegade if you need to. All your 12 volt fuses, and then the real neat fact here is everything that's on this strip is fed by the inverter. So that's how you can easily tell this is what my inverter will power.
Right. And then the bottom would be
this is everything down here. So if you look, you got, I forgot one item that won't run off inverter. Aquahot electric.
Okay.
So you can run your Aquahot without being hooked up to shore or run your generator, but on diesel. But if you want to use the electric element, you got to have shore power or diesel. It draws a decent amount of wattage.
So you will demonstrate how to turn that on.
Yeah, we'll do that up here in the Firefly system. But so here's everything down here has to be either running off of shore or off your generator. So your front AC, of course, that's your inverter input, like the power going to it from shore and generator, your dryer, your rear AC, Aquahot, and then you got a few receptacles like a living room and a bedroom receptacle, range and washer. You know what? I thought the range was on the inverter. It's not. So that's on shore. That's on shore or diesel only. In the smaller coaches, it's because it's less burners. On the smaller coaches, they don't have the multiple burners. They will run off inverter. That will not. Sorry about that.
No worries. Good for clarity.
See, I'm learning along the way all the time.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Awesome. You're doing a great job, Kyle.
I don't mind admitting when I'm wrong. So on your Firefly system. Here's your home screen. Of course, you got master light on and off, and like I was talking about, if you go into lighting controls and you dim a light, and I hit off and I hit on, it returns back to what it was. But if I go back and hold down the on, it returns everything to full brightness. And that for sure worked that time.
Yeah.
So everything with up and down arrows is obviously dimmable. I always tell people, like on your exterior cargo bays, I usually leave all the light switches, because each of the lights in the bays have like little toggle switches. I usually leave those on, and then I just know that from my phone or here, I can just turn them all on and off together so that I know that they're on or off. Versus, I turn this on and go out there and they're still not, so I'm under trying to reach and click a bunch of buttons.
So leave them on all the time, and then
on the bays, like an actual light in the bay, and then you just control it from here.
And then whenever you close the door, it goes off. I mean,
well, you just turn it off from here. So it's not like a door signal.
Didn't have a door switch.
You can use your phone or the app.
Oh, so it literally could stay on for 24 hours if you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So back to home. So you've got the little. It's probably hidden behind that wall. Here, if you guys want to hop over for a second, I'll run this slide out. So anytime you run slides out, it's definitely more important on the Swintex slide in the rear, but you always want to run your slides all the way out and all the way in. When you're running this, like we're running this slide out right now. Gotta get there. And this is on a rack and pinion system, and so the motor that drives this is literally right here underneath the floor. It's got a 3/4 inch socket on the back of it, so in theory, a gear wrench would probably be the best tool. You can roll underneath there on a creeper or crawl underneath there. That clicking is what you want to hear. That tells you that it's all the way out.
Got it.
But you can, in theory, could crawl underneath there and put a 3/4 inch, because you can't get an impact behind it. The back of your box is right here. That motor sits like this. That 3/4 inch socket on the back is right there. So the best way to do it would be put a 3/4 inch gear wrench on it and sit there and crank it. It's geared really low. It'll take a lot of beer. I mean,
or a small impact with a swivel.
I had a customer that wanted to know the details, and I said, "I'll find out." I don't think you get it. I don't even think you could get one of the what do they call those?
Like a swivel that.
I don't think that would fit. It's
okay,
tight.
we'll look at it because I want to see where it's at. Because
Yeah.
I don't want to be somewhere and then have to call you in the event. How do you get the slide in if you have it?
Because I did it one day, and it's like you get underneath there. And you're like crank, 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 and it's like I don't know if it's doing anything. And then, I had Darren was out here. One of my texted us. He's an awesome RV guy for us. Does diesel work too, but he was out here. He goes, "Wait a minute, I think I saw it move." I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" So it's geared really low.
Okay.
But what the theory we came up with, and what would be if you really wanted to be like extra prepared for that potential, which I haven't heard a lot of. But if you want to be extra prepared, what I would probably do is I would try to figure out, because it looks like that 3/4 bolt backs up to like the backside of a box. I would probably cut a hole in the box and put like one of those screw-on cover plates. And that way, with an impact, you could just, like in that case, you're ready, take that cover off, stick your extension on there with a 3/4 socket, and run her in or out.
Okay, you can show me that in a minute, because you have to see it when the slide's out, right?
I've never seen anybody do it, but if somebody wanted to be like, this is my modification to be able to manually run, that'd be the perfect way to do it.
Okay. And again, jacks down before slides out. So
correct.
Got it.
And we're leveled right now.
And you're going to show me how to do that too.
So
and
on the rear side,
this is rack and pinion. That's a Swintex in the back.
Now, there's bad buzz on the internet for Swintex systems, and a lot of that's because cheap RV manufacturers like using Swintex because they can save money, and they use it on too big of a slide, and the slides are not designed for that. Another thing with the Swintex system, I'm still holding the button right now. It turned itself off.
Yeah, I did see, though, it did not go out at the same time back there.
It was a little off?
Looking at the bed, this side, the side closest to us stopped first, and then that side of the bed went probably...
So to my point, on the Swintex system, you have 2 electric motors on each side. Those electric motors have different length wires that are going to them, and so that means there's voltage drop, which voltage drop means they're going to turn at a different speed.
Yeah.
So anytime you run Swintex slides in and out, it's extremely important that you run them all the way out, because like you said, the one side went out, the other side caught up to it. That's fine, but now you do that 20 times, and don't go all the way out and let it stop at this cockeyed position. Then you bring it in and leave it at a cockeyed position. Then you run it out, and now we're even this more cockeyed, and then eventually it's going to get stuck.
Yeah.
So that's why anytime you run it in and out, you always go all the way out, and you hold the button until it stops, because those motors will see that resistance to be, like when it hits the wall and it can't go out anymore, the motor sees that resistance, which causes a voltage spike, and it kicks itself off.
Yeah. Oh, good. And then I want to show me how to manually put that one in at some point.
Yep. So then we talk about light controls, and then we go down in here, and there's your electrical system. So right now here, it shows power source 50 amp shore, line 1 and line 2. So we've got 123 volts on line 1, 123 volts on line. It was fluctuating a volt there, but then 60 hertz is what's common, going through your transfer switch to your breaker box. Then you got going to your inverter. Then it's got, of course, your house voltage, your chassis voltage. Right now it says inverter is pass-through. So that's saying that we have 110 coming and going through the inverter. It's not having to invert DC to AC for that to work. The batteries are fully charged at this point, so they're just in a float state to maintain. Of course, that's your rear and AC stuff. It's off. The AGS, which I'll talk about here in a second, and then start and stop your generator. To start your generator, you just have to hold the start button and just hold it until it finally starts. If we were hooked up to like a 30 amp service, this would show up as a 15 because it doesn't know the difference. You would have to manually click it and tell it to cycle through to where it's on a 30 and not a 15. There's just no way for it to know. It can't, it can't measure the amperage.
So again, if I'm hooked up to 110 or 15 amp, so or even a 30, it'll
default to, because it sees one line.
Yep.
And so it's going to go, okay, well, worst case scenario, I'm hooked up to 15 amp.
Yeah, so I need to come in here. If I'm hooked up to a 30, I need to come in here
you can pump it up.
And tell it that I'm at 30 amp.
And only if you need the 30 amps. If you're just plugging it into a 15 to keep batteries charged up, I wouldn't worry about doing all that. But if you want to be able to free up more electronic stuff, because when it sheds electronics like HVAC units, it'll just pop up the word shed in the display.
It's dimmed out and you can't really...
Yeah.
Okay.
So we go... Of course, here's inverter, just more information. Nothing that you're going to want to change or anything. Power.
But you talked about AGS in a minute, so I know we're going to go through that.
Of course, none of this stuff is showing anything because we're inside. And then, okay, AGS. So auto gen start. Anytime you put the key in the ignition, it will automatically disable auto gen start because it doesn't know where you're moving the coach to. So you could be taking it home in your barn, and it'd still be on. It's out there. You had animals or livestock or whatever. It could. That carbon monoxide is poisoning, so it'll always disable whenever you move it. So to enable auto gen start, you hit the button, hold the button down for 3 seconds, and now it's enabled. Now, even though it's enabled, like right now under the current state, it would never fire up because we have nothing to trigger auto gen start. So you can trigger auto gen start based on voltage or HVAC load. So if I've got my thermostat set to 70 degrees and it gets too warm out, like say you get your dog on the RV and you're in a national park, dog can't go with you because it's against the law. You want to make sure the dog doesn't get too hot. You can set the thermostat to 70. If the temperature rises above that, the generator will see that and it will fire up and cool the coach down and shut back down.
So one clarification point on that. So perfect analogy there, Kyle, to share with us. So we have to leave our dog on the coach. We go away for 3 hours. Shore power goes out for some reason.
You can do the same thing.
It'll do the same thing. But I have to turn the auto gen start on.
Yep.
For that to happen. So one is because if I've got my shore power hooked up, the HVAC units are just going to cycle based on the thermostat anyway.
Correct.
That really where this HES comes in is if have an intermittent power failure for some reason with shore power, or if I'm just out boondocking somewhere and I only have my generator on, that generator will start when it gets to that certain temperature level inside the coach, and it'll fire up the HVAC. Either one of those are kind of
correct. And I don't know. There's a temperature variable there that I don't know. Let's call it 5 degrees. Just my best guess would be is 5 degrees. So if you're hooked up to power and you've got your thermostat on, when your thermostat sees 69 degrees, it's going to start to cool.
Yeah.
Because it gets to 71 degrees, it's going to start to cool because you want it at 70. On the auto gen start, I think it's something like 5 degrees. So once it gets up to 75 degrees, it's like, well, they wanted it at 70. and nothing else is kicking on. So now the generator's going to say, well, I'm going to go ahead and kick on so I can power the HVAC system.
Yeah, but the AGS has to be on for it to do that.
Right, yes. And right now, like, we're hooked up to 50 amp, and we have AGS on. So, so if the power was to go out, AGS is still going to stay on. And so let's say we lost power. Like, you got your RV out in your barn. The fridge is full of food, milk and eggs and all that kind of stuff. You lose, storm comes through, takes out your power. The fridge draws down the batteries to the inverter. You've got voltage trigger turned on. It would automatically fire the generator. Of course, in your barn you wouldn't do that, but in theory, it would automatically power up your generator, charge your battery system back. No different than if you're at a campsite. It would do the exact same thing. And then if you do the HVAC load as well, so now it's going to do low voltage and HVAC, and that is solely based on what you have this set at here. So if you've got cool set to 73 degrees, it will kick on when it gets to that threshold.
Okay.
On the HVAC system, obviously this is where we're setting temperature. This is the current temperature in the coach. These are where it's getting the temperature from.
Okay, those temperature probes. But again, we have the option on this to either set it for low voltage. So the auto generator start will happen either at a setting of low voltage or at a temperature for the HVAC.
Correct. So either two variables that could fire the generator: low voltage or temperature inside the coach.
Got it.
And in AGS, there's nothing you're going to change as far as, like, I would not change any of these settings as far as, like, the stop at voltage and all that kind of stuff. The only thing that I would maybe mess with is, your quiet hours. So if you're in Yellowstone National Park, Master Creek Campground, you can't run a generator from 8 to 8. So you would, from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., I would set that so that I know that my generator won't automatically kick on during those time periods. Maximum retries is 4. You can adjust that. And the reason it has a retry thing, generator has no idea how much fuel is in the tank. So if it's below a quarter tank, your generator, in theory, will not start. Now, keep in mind, the fuel tank gauge on the Renegades, or on the Freightliner chassis, is very conservative. So it might show 1/8 of a tank, but you still got 25, 30 gallons of fuel.
Got it.
I mean, it's pretty conservative.
But the generator has also a function to where it shuts off, so it's not going to run out your tank.
Well, it literally is as simple as a dip tube.
Okay.
So if that tube doesn't hit the bottom of the tank and the fuel level drops below it, it can't suck fuel.
Got it.
And what I was saying, though, is you might be showing 1/8 of a tank in the gauge, and the generator still runs. Because you'll go to the fuel station at 1/8 of a tank. It does not take 75 gallons to get you back to full. It takes 60.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice, because it's just that much more chance you won't get somewhere and be out of fuel.
Right.
So that makes all sense there. Let's see. So we go... Of course, we talked about HVAC. Oh, you do have... so if you're using your AquaHot system, the AquaHot system needs a source, and you have to enable those sources manually. It's not automatic. So you have to tell the coach that it's allowed to use electric, and you have to tell it that it's allowed to use the burner. It won't just automatically do it. Now, if you have both sources on, it will automatically manage, like, electric first, then diesel. The way to look at the AquaHot electric and diesel functions is electric is a preheat. So that's what keeps the system in a ready function, especially if you're hooked up to electric somewhere. And then diesel is really what is going to do the work as far as, like, heating the coach, taking a hot shower. Now, if you're just wanting to wash hands on occasion or a little bit of dishes, like, the electric function will do it, but it's not going to keep up with any large demand by any means.
So again, when we go park at a site somewhere,
you're going to be using diesel.
We're gonna want to come in here and enable the electric and diesel.
Yeah, if you're hooked up to electric, do both. Because the electric will help offset the fuel usage. But when you start really cranking some heat, it's going to need that diesel to do it. Now, keep in mind, I said 0.4 of a gallon per hour maximum. The coach is so well insulated. It's not like it's going to be sucking 0.4 of a gallon the entire time you're trying to heat the coach. It's going to kick on and off.
So another application. So we're cruising down the road and we want to have hot water to do clothes. We're going to need to have the electric and diesel on for that.
Well, I would just do diesel.
Diesel
by
on
itself. I wouldn't run the generator just to get hot water. Because that AquaHot electric does require either power from shore or generator.
Got it. So just toggle on diesel only in that.
Diesel will work fine by itself.
Yeah.
But if you got electric, I'd use it. I mean, The aqua hot system heats up very quickly. It does not take long, especially with that diesel burner. So
and the aqua hot, you talked about there's points that the heat comes out in here at some radiant point.
Yeah.
And has
So there's a radiator right there. It looks like.
Yep.
Might be one down on the end down here.
Okay.
And then the one I can show you is the one the better underneath that bed that we should be able to see one of the systems.
Perfect.
And then the last thing is you do have a thermostat for your bay outside. So if you do get into the mountains somewhere and you don't want your pipes down there to freeze, 55 is plenty.
Right.
And I would just use the aqua hot source. And once again, they duplicate those functions here where you can turn aqua hot sources on and off and aqua hot on, so that you keep that bay from freezing.
But again, I can run that either on electric or diesel.
Correct.
Yeah.
I would, if you're trying to heat, if you're somewhere, if heating is an issue as far as keeping the coach warm or keeping stuff from freezing, on the safe side, I would turn on both, because it'll use electric. It will use diesel if it needs to.
Right.
It's not just going to use diesel because you have it turned on. But let's say you're somewhere and you just don't want to use diesel because you have half a tank and you got X amount you want to drive and you just don't want to use diesel. You have that ability to keep it from using diesel.
Yeah, and it'll just keep
You'll never, between the generator and the aqua hot system, you'll never be like, oh man, my tank's quarter tank low from burning diesel. Like it uses so little.
Right.
You're not something you're going to notice. I mean, even if you run your generator for 2 days, it's just not something you're going to notice. Like, oh, I'm down half. It just doesn't use enough fuel to really be noticeable. Of course, your bathroom fan control. We did install the vent cover for you, which is nice because you can use that now with whether it be raining or driving down the road. If it hadn't been for the vent cover we put on there, you would not want to use that driving down the road or in the rain. Now, it does have a rain sensor where it would automatically close, but it's just nice to be able to, like, if you're driving like nice Western drive somewhere, and you got your windows cracked for fresh air, it's nice to be able to run that fan because it'll just help draw that air back through the coach. Of course, your slide controls. I get this phone call too. Oh, my slides don't work, and I've learned over time to ask very simple questions up front. I say, could you key in the ignition? Oh yeah.
So back to the fan cover though.
Yeah.
That cover that you put on there, it doesn't have to go up or down or anything, right?
No, and the same thing with the. This is something I learned a while back. Is when I first did the first one, because I installed it. So when you first, when the fan cover goes up, it's on an electric motor, and that fan cover will go up and it will hit that inside cover. Same thing, hits that voltage spike and kills it. Because that's what I was want to know is like, am I going to burn something up because the fan cover's hitting that thing? It's designed to do that. It's designed to hit it and stop.
Okay.
So here you got your slide controls, which has got your on and everything in it. If key is in the ignition, it's going to lock all this stuff out. You won't be able to use it. We talked about slides going all the way.
Yeah. So if the key is in the ignition,
it'll show a little lock somewhere on the screen.
Okay.
And I've had my slides won't go out. Take the key out of the ignition. I've had those phone calls. In the leveling system, you can I literally can manually lift the front and the rear just by pushing these buttons right now. And of course, auto level is what you're going to use for the most part. And then if you've been driving down the road and it's been bouncing, there's little sensors that tell it that the jacks are up. It may lose connection, and so you go to hit auto level and it just won't do anything. You hit does nothing. Well, hit all retract, you'll hear it like pull up tight. It'll hit that sensor again, and then you'll be able to hit auto level. Works every time.
So my snap pads are supposed to show up today. I had on the way over here. They said they were going to deliver today. You suggested that I could just lay on the ground, have one of those, put some Dawn dishwashing soap on.
Yeah, you can use Dawn just make a cup of really soapy dishwater and just like lube it up. Or I use the spray Dawn, and it just gives a little more slicker surface for the snap on.
And then lay down and just let one jack down at a time.
Yeah, just run you may just have to run the front, like you can run the front down like a little bit because they kind of come down together.
Yeah.
So you can let the front down a little bit. So now your two front jacks are down 4 or 5 inches. Then what you can do is you can run your right side down. So the front one's already ahead of the back on the right side. So it's going to hit the ground first, and then that way you can lock it into place. Or you could even, depending on what, you're giving like a concrete surface. Yeah, so I mean, really what you could do is you could just run both front jacks down pretty close to the ground. Because you literally, with your cell phone, with it being connected to this, you could just lay it with your phone and like watch
jog it,
come down, and then get both of them kind of like lined up where you want them, and then just continue to run it down. And they will, the way they coach, they'll snap right on there.
Okay, perfect.
It's worth noting for the those snap pads are awesome. I recommend everybody on the Renegade Valencias, for whoever does see this. The way the rear suspension on Valencia is different, and that arm back there hits the very corner of that snap pad. And if anybody's had it on there, you can look at it and you'll see wear marks. And it has been known that suspension will knock the pad off.
On the Valencia, not the Verona.
Not the Verona. Yeah, Verona's are perfectly fine. So anytime you put snap-ons on any motorhome, you want to look for clearance issues. But you're perfectly fine Verona, Verona LE, and most of the other products.
Perfect.
Because some people will see like snap pads didn't work on my Renegade, but they didn't specify that it was a Valencia. So that, of course, you can control out here. Of course, we talked about running slides all in and out anytime you level. Coach needs to be level if you run slides out. Awning controls, which are extend and retract. It does have a wind sensor in it. Now, this is just the nature of the beast. You could have a $2 million motorhome. They're not going to put an armed awning on a $2 million motorhome. They're ugly. I mean, it just has those big, ugly arms going down the side of the coach. It doesn't look sleek. It doesn't look nice. And so everything's going to have an armless awning, which they're nice. They're great for shade and fair weather. So, like, it'll run straight out. But if there is any chance, like if you're on a lakefront, don't use your awning. Just don't do it. Because one big gust of wind, that thing's floated over top of your coach. And you're taking it off and getting it repaired. If common sense, if you're in the woods somewhere and you just don't feel that exposed to bad weather, obviously use it and enjoy your awning. If it's going to rain, like if it's a light sprinkle, it's probably fine. If it's going to rain heavy, don't. It's a fair weather awning. And it's all because they want that sleek, nice look.
Great advice, Kyle.
Yeah, I wish they were more functional, but to get that functionality, you had to sacrifice so much. Yeah. It would just look like a clunky, cheaper RV with a big armed awning on it. So that's everything there. Of course, in the settings, here's your mobile app. That's where you scan your QR code. That's your ID. There's your PIN. Yeah, you can go into network diagnostics. This shows you. If you ever do have to, in the future, call and talk to anybody, this is where they want to know like your firmware versions. This is not common, but if it did come up and you're trying to diagnose something over the road, that's where you would find that kind of information. And then this shows all your outputs through your Firefly system.
Does Renegade ever have a flash update that they would want you to download?
Not very often.
Okay.
Not really, only if there's really an issue.
Got it.
You're not, everything that's on this, everything what you're sending it's just sending 12-volt signals. It's not overly complicated. It's not like it's a phone that you download apps to that have updates, and then the phone needs to keep up with all. It's just not that complicated. Like, if the systems are working and it's sending proper 12-volt signals without glitching, then really there's no need for anything like that. And it shows the inputs you have coming in, air conditioners, vent fans. So you can kind of look and see some stuff that's going on. The cleaning mode does not wipe out your entire Firefly system. It locks the screen for 15 seconds or 10, so you can clean it. So you're not pushing buttons while you're doing all that. It's important that you keep your hours set correctly for your time. It's another awesome reason not to turn the battery disconnect switch off, so you're not having to reset your time all the time. Because if you've got generators set for quiet hours, this obviously has to be correct, or it won't be quiet when you want it to be quiet. That's really. The switch panel info is just nice. You have two main screens in this coach, which most of the coaches do. If there's a fridge right here, you got the dinette switch panel over here, and you got the switch panel by the entry. It shows you that you have a really nice, strong signal coming to this for the wireless control, and then the battery life is good. Now, this doesn't know if that panel over on the wall is 12-volt battery battery operated or 12-volt hardwired. So it just knows that it has plenty of power. If anytime there's a signal issue between one of the control panels and the Firefly system, you'll get a fault. It always just assumes low battery. It could potentially be a bad control panel, which those are, literally you snap them off and put one on. But it just assumes it's low battery if it doesn't see it. And that's why when you push the button on there, it lights up green telling you got a successful signal. But that's everything in your Firefly system. Any questions on that?
Nope. Great job. Good demonstration there.
Of course, cabinetry here next to your fridge. Of course, these pull-out drawers. Residential refrigerator. That is exactly what's in your house. No different than at home. You do have transit locks here, so that when you're driving on the road, it doesn't slide open, especially when you get weight and stuff in it. This fridge will go out that door. So if a decade down the road, they come up with this really cool fridge. It does, who knows, what talks to you, or I don't know, hands you your food and your beer. you got to take the doors off. So the doors would have to come off, and then the fridge would go out the door. What's nice about your residential refrigerators is the fact that you got a lot more storage capacity. When you get into like the dual fuel refrigerators, there's more mechanisms in the back of them, which then eats up more of this space.
Right, you got almost
gives you less storage. This does have an ice maker. For some reason, for winterization purposes, or if you just don't want to use the ice maker, that shut off for that ice maker is way back there in the back, so you need a little stool or something to turn the bath. Your HVAC units are heating and cooling, and they are ducted. So, like before we move to the back, you know, like this is just dumping air into the coach, or you can slide these over and it pushes it through the ductwork. I personally would just probably leave it to the ductwork, and then just keep an eye on these filters that when they get dusty, you can pull them down and wash them out. And that just gives you even temperature throughout the coach. On this couch, so this is a nice jackknife couch, which makes a sofa. What's really nice about those is it doesn't have a bar in it like a lot of your traditional hideaways would. So this just lifts up, comes up this way. You grab this lever, this pops up, comes down. And then the back part just flips down. And you do have seat belts for 3 here. And then typically I would just put the cushions back across the back. But really just make this into a bed. And what, you know, like the big thing is just there's no, if you got a guest sleeping here, they're not sitting on a bar. So on your dinette, of course, you can make this into a bed. It's roughly 3 by 5. The biggest trick to know here is that when you're, don't push here to lower it, because you can tell it's kind of putting a bind on the back wall. If you push down the center, I've got it flipped the right way. Nope, we're good. If you push down the center, it goes down a lot easier than trying to like push on the edge. Of course, that's just all cabinet space. Your lighting, really nothing. I mean, outlets. You got USB C and A over there in your outlet. Then, like I said, that's your temperature sensor. You got your washer and dryer right here. It's 2 separate units. I have no personal experience, but I have had several people tell me that when the combination unit, Renegade uses the 2 separate units because they claim that the dryer does a much better job of drying as a sole dryer versus a combination washer and dryer. And I've heard from other customers that have had them that, yeah, they don't dry that well. Just a fun fact.
Okay.
But I have one lady who has they've traveled in their Renegade, and she swears that her kids' clothes come out cleaner when she does laundry driving. So,
okay.
Extra agitation. Yep.
Okay.
So here's the other Firefly system. The only thing I'll point out here is, if you go into your settings in switch panel info, now you see the other 3 that are back here on the other side of the fridge. So the one in the bathroom, the bed overhead, and then the bathroom. So I guess there's 2. Toilet. And then bedroom. Oh, okay. So this one, bed overhead, yeah, so this one here, that one there, and that one there. So it just shows that they're all well connected and everything. And everything else is a 100% mirror.
So 3 wire. All you're telling me here is on this Firefly panel,
there's 3 remotes connected to it.
3 remotes.
And you can see those. That's the only thing different about this one. Everything else is mirrored identically, other than, the 2 panels up there are tied to that one wirelessly. The 3 back here are tied to this one wirelessly. So that we're avoiding that fridge interference we saw on earlier models.
Got it.
Of Of course, your shower, the shower head on it up there is adjustable on the bar. It's got a shut off on it if you're trying to conserve water, if you're boondocking and whatnot.
Yep.
Renegade many years ago added an access panel underneath the shower, so annually that is something I would check. Like just to, because this drives down the road and you might go some pretty rough places. Just look that there's no water leaking or any signs of water leaking or something come loose, and you actually get to it. I mean, you look at some stuff like that and it's like there is no access. Like, how in the world would I get in there?
Yeah.
This is a macerator toilet. You can see that we've winterized it. You got 3 buttons. It's super simple. You hit one button to empty it, so that it'll empty the system out. Another button is for normal flush, so like a number 2, and an eco flush for number 1. So it uses less water for number 1, uses more water for number 2, and then of course to empty the bowl. So pretty simple. Like we talked about, that being a macerator toilet, the waste. So you only want to use RV toilet tissue. You definitely don't want to run anything through there. Like, that's not dumping into a tank. It's getting ground down and pumped through a very small line. So, like a Lego, a Hot Wheel, any other stuff that's just not meant for a toilet will cause serious. It's going to be just no questions asked. It's going to cause serious damage, and that's a $1,000 toilet. Of course, you've got cabinet space.
Yep, nice storage.
Of course, you've got storage down here. This is a medicine cabinet. So you have storage behind your mirror. The other temperature sensor for the bedroom is right here. They do it mid-height just so you're actually heating or cooling to roughly what you want on average. Of course, you've got your wardrobe here. The wardrobe on the other side has this removable panel. Kind of more like her side. If she's got longer dresses or stuff you want to hang that hangs down lower, you can pull that panel out. Emergency exit window. It is on a hinge. That is not intended to be used. People do it. So people will use these for airflow, but there's nothing to really hold it out or nothing. So I've seen where people factions. I don't really recommend it, but required by law, emergency exit. So this pops open and it's got a hinge up here, and that way you can escape in case of a fire or whatever. Of course, your TV mounted up top. This is the entertainment center below for the TV up here. They have a Blu-ray player back here too. More storage, the remotes that are for back here. More storage drawers and top close. Of course, your rear HVAC unit. These are heating and cooling, 15,000 BTU heat pumps. Once again, you can do the whole dump thing, dump the air straight down, or force it through the vents.
You can run separately, and
you can do dual climate. So now you can set the temperatures different between the front and the rear, but you can't heat in the front and cool in the back, or vice versa. So you can heat this space to 70 and heat that space to 72 or 60. You can do that, but you can't cool that to 60 and heat this to 80. It has to be just a variation in heating or cooling.
Yeah, it is dual zone, but you can't run heat and air at the same time.
You can't have one person wants to freeze to death in the front, one person wants to sweat to death in the back.
Yep.
It has to be your heating or cooling, but just at different temperature levels. And really, you got another touch panel up there, which has a generator start on it, which everything's doable from your phone. Of course, this storage up top. We talked about the Swintech slides. So, since we're standing in here, so you got the track. There's a track on the side of the slide, which it runs on for the Swintech. And then in behind this wall, there's a motor with a little gear on it. And so on the Swintech system, on the outside of the coach, you basically, and it's not the easiest thing to know, but it's doable. You pull the rubber flap back, you get in there, and you push the motor gear up out of the track. And that allows, I'd say 2 people, it's like me and you. We could push those motors up out of that track. We could walk out there, put our hands on that slide, and push it in. And then you would just want to make sure that you put those slide locks in, because nothing's holding that slide from moving in or out on its own.
Yeah, once the motor's disengaged.
You want to make sure you put those slide locks in there to keep the slide in. And then the last thing, that's the Swintech is definitely by far easier to manually do than the rack and pinion.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 75-gallon roto-molded water tanks. Roto-molded is the same way they build whitewater kayaks. No seaming. There's nothing no seam to bust or crack.
Right.
Extremely durable. This right here is part of the AquaHot system. So this is what the radiators look like that are in your coach. You got hot coolant coming out and hot coolant going out. You know, they return back to be heated again. You got these little fans, and that's what blows air across those radiators. They're being heated by the glycol to heat the coach. So it's a really neat little system, and these are spread out throughout the unit.
Okay.
You got that's your fill coming in, like from, you know, to fill your freshwater tanks.
Right.
They have an equalizer at the bottom, so it's only filling this tank, but they'll equalize together.
Okay.
And then that over there is, which is open right now, that's your dump valve for your freshwater tank. So that's what dumps all the water out of the tanks in case you don't want them to freeze. And then a really neat feature is that what I would do. One, you can look at just how well Renegade built their structure. I mean, just a little tubing underneath the bed.
Yeah, they do a great job with all the
this is just
hardwood.
a pole that you can pull, stick down the corner and wedge anywhere just to keep it open if you need to. But if you do have to winterize, they make it really easy, because all you got to do is get like a 5-gallon Lowe's bucket or Home Depot bucket, put antifreeze in it. You stick this clear hose down in the bucket. This is your water pump right here, which we've already, like when we do the PDI process, we check that it's set correctly, because you can change the flow, like the pump setting on the set screw, and we do it so that you're getting good enough pressure, but it doesn't just stay on. So we tweak that whenever we do the PDI. It's set good now. But you put this hose down the bucket of antifreeze, and then like right now it's actually set to pull from the hose because we winterized it. But if you wanted to go back to freshwater, now when you turn the water pump on, it's going to pull from the freshwater tank. Now when I turn it this way, it's going to pull from the clear hose out of the antifreeze. So now I can go turn my water pump on, and I can just easily pull antifreeze to the entire coach.
Yeah.
So that makes it super easy.
So at this point, right, as an end user here, if we're going to go immediately to a campground, we need to flip that valve.
Yeah, so you'd want to be in this mode.
Yeah.
So that it's, you know, it's in the liquid's going to pull from whatever's in line with the valve itself. So this is pulling straight from this hose that's going underneath and in the bottom of this tank.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, they make it pretty user friendly.
Okay.
These are not hard to winterize. Yeah, the biggest thing is just making sure that you go around it. Like the things that people forget to do is their ice maker. They forget to check. The biggest one is outdoor showers. If you have outdoor showers or hoses, and then the freshwater filter. Like they'll drain everything on the entire coach, and then forget to just take the freshwater filter off and dump the water out of it.
Yeah, the outdoor shower comes on the 40 model, the 40-foot model. Is that right?
I know it does on the LE. I don't know if it does on the 40 VRB or not. I'd have to look.
Okay, no worries.
I can't remember. Life blends together.
The strap on this door.
Yep. So you got.
How does that
it's just got
operate?
Well, it's just got a really strong magnet on it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I personally, knowing you guys, it would probably be worth, because you can't really put. I mean, you could. What I would recommend doing, I mean, you could buy like those straps and put a button on here and put a strap across this. That's kind of ugly. I wouldn't do that. What I would do is I would take a $2 doorstop. Like if you get to where you're going, like forest service roads or gravel roads, or maybe something just like a little more like out west where you're just on rougher roads, I would just stick a doorstop, wedge one underneath the edge of this door. Okay. So, if you hit a hard enough bump, hard enough, I mean, it could potentially slide the door open. Okay. It's going to take a decent jolt, but I mean that's what we've done in the past. Okay. And that way, it's something you can take it out. You're not looking at some ugly strap. I have the wall right here. Right. That's all I know. I mean, you got questions?
Oh, well, first of all, Kyle, great job. Really appreciate the tour. It was helpful, and this will be a good reference tool
that's a long video.
to go back and kind of rewatch again. So I know we still got to go through the cab here in a minute.
Yep. Well, yeah, we can go up to the cab here. Yep. So here, we can do that real quick. I got a key up here. So we'll start with the ignition here. Come up here now. So as far as the cab, so it's a diesel engine, and any time that you start the engine, you want to turn the key over. You want to let all your gauges sweep back and forth. The intake heater light will come on, and that's telling you that if that stays on, you need to wait. Colder climates, it's heating that air intake, so the engine will start easier. the biggest right here. You've got the most common light you're going to see that's yellow is there's a little puff of exhaust yellow light with like a little thermometer in it, and that is just high exhaust temperature warning. When they first came out with that in 2007, I mean, we had people calling us nonstop. I got a light on. Well, all that light is you're driving down the highway. Let me back up. So, all engines manufactured January 1st, 2007 has a diesel particulate filter on them. The way those things function is they dose diesel fuel into the exhaust system. It gets so much particulate built up in it, it basically cleans itself out like an oven. It bakes itself and knocks all that stuff out of it. Well, that creates a lot of heat, like close to 1,000 degrees. So if you're driving down the highway, as long as you're moving more than 20 miles an hour and the DPF system needs to regenerate, it'll do that all by itself. Nothing you need to do. And you'll never need to do a manual regen, because in an RV application, you're going places and driving on the highway, and this thing's heavy. So that's the best thing for a diesel engine, is that being heavy and being worked hard, it's going to burn clean and very efficient. But by some chance you're driving down the highway and it went into a regen all by itself, and it's beeping because our jacks are down. I got key ignition, but you're driving down the highway, it goes into a regen, you pull off to get fuel, that light will pop on to tell you that the exhaust temperature is high, and that's just warning, so you don't park over dead grass, or you don't go back there to monkey with something like in your wet bay. It's just, you know that it's hot. Don't burn yourself, because you can catch grass on fire. I literally had a road department melt vinyl off the side of a building, because some of the exhaust pipes on vehicles is vertical. A lot of your other typical lights as far as traction control, ABS that you have on a lot of your automobiles today. But in the diesel engine, we're modern. There's over 2,000 operations going on per second. Today's engines are very complicated, but everything's tracked with fault codes. So when you're driving down the road and you get a yellow engine light, which you've got a check engine light and a stop engine light that's red. The yellow engine light is associated to like minor codes. So if you're driving down the road and you get a low battery voltage, like you let your battery drain down, there's different variables that could trigger a light, but not necessarily be major problems. So if you're driving down the road and you get a yellow engine light, unless you hear, feel, or see anything different, I would keep driving, because if you just run to the closest dealership and the problem goes away, because those codes can self-heal. So you get to where you're going, and after so many key cycles, it clears itself out. We don't know. No one knows the fix. So if you don't hear or see anything different, just keep driving. And then you get back from a long trip, or it stayed on for a few weeks, and say, all right, I'm going to go get this looked at. Since it's staying on, hopefully it'll stay on for the dealership to look at it and get it diagnosed and fixed. Because a lot of times you'll end up running something in. We do diagnostics. We can't duplicate it. We have to charge a fee for doing all that work, because we can't warranty something that's not broke. Any dealership's the same. Now, what is important is there's an engine light that's red. That red engine light is only associated to catastrophic engine failure. And the perfect example of that is you blew a radiator hose, your coolant drops, you will blow your motor up. And that does mean to pull over as soon as you possibly can, as long as it is safe.
So for those new folks who are not necessarily accustomed to driving a diesel motorhome like this, once that cycle completes itself, people are able to start the engine.
Yeah, once all your gauges sweep over and the engine intake heater, some manufacturers say like wait to start. Theirs says intake heater. Once those lights go off, you can just crank over and start it right up. There's obviously other lights, like parking brake pull, traction control. Like if you lose traction in some snow somewhere and that light comes on and it stays on, if you do a key cycle enough, every code has key cycles associated to it. So if it's a traction control, after 3 key cycles, it'll clear itself out. On the left hand of the steering wheel here, this is where you turn on like your cruise control, and then you have resume, excel, and like coast and set, not like an automobile. The switch below that is your headlights and marker lights. Up for your headlights, down for just marker lights. I would just turn headlights on every time you go somewhere. And then you have an increase and decrease for gauge brightness over here on the left, and then you just have a vent. And then your mirrors are powered for flat glass only, so that's your top mirrors. Your convex have to be manually adjusted. You do have an engine brake. This is what turns your engine brake on. and this is what sets your high and low on your engine brake. And you'll know your engine brake's on. You will feel it slowing the vehicle down. There is no disadvantage to running an engine brake all the time. I mean, technically you're going to conserve very minute extra fuel because every time you let the accelerator, it brakes a little, but as soon as I would just leave it on. It'll save your brakes.
And for those folks that are new to an engine brake and how to use it, what designates when you have high and low on?
Just so this is because there's places that have engine brake restrictions, so you have to have an off switch by law. So this is off, this is on, and then you basically flip it up for high, which is basically all 6 cylinders are braking the engine, and then on low it's either 2 or 4. I'm not probably or 3. 2. Every motor's a little different. On the L9, I think it's 3.
Okay, so up is all 6.
Yeah, up is all 6 on engine braking, and then down is 2 or 3 cylinders.
Got it.
I mean, I personally would probably just use the high function the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there and it functions, but if you're going to use engine brake, I would just use the whole. Because new engine brakes today are not like engine brakes were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, an engine brake would throw you into the windshield if you weren't wearing your seatbelt. But today's engines and technology, we can't have engine brakes that are that strong. You will melt the piston rings.
Yeah, but I guess another common question that might be asked for folks who are new to this is, do you only use your engine brake when you're towing, or would you use your engine brake when you're on all the time?
I'd use it all the time.
Okay.
Just because you're gonna save brakes, and it makes driving when you use your engine brake, it makes driving easier because you're doing a lot more single pedal driving than dual pedal driving. Because now when you're wanting to slow up to back up off of a car because you're getting too close to traffic and slow down, you're letting off an accelerator and the vehicle's automatically starting to slow itself down versus having to go back and forth. So it just makes driving that much simpler. And the disadvantage in the trucking world is that uses more fuel because you take a 1,000 truck fleet and their engine brakes are cutting vehicles back and they got to accelerate to get the speed back. Well, that starts to add up on 1,000 vehicles. And your motorhome, you're talking tenths of a mile per gallon. I mean, you'll never notice it. So it just doesn't really relate in the same way. Of course, your power windows up and down. Your mirrors are heated on the outside, so for snow and ice. Your door locks, which are located here. Big trucks like this do not have a park crawl like you would have in a car to put it in park. You would break it, something this big. So the only way to keep the vehicle from rolling away is to use the parking brake. So you pull it to apply it, push it to release it. The reason we have air brakes on large vehicles is because it's a safety factor. One, they have a lot more braking power, and if for some chance, this vehicle weighs 30-ish something thousand pounds, if you lost air pressure or something cut the line, sabotage, never heard of that. But in theory, if you lose air pressure, the vehicle brakes lock up. Like, it's not going to be a runaway vehicle at that point. Whereas if people have probably driven vehicle, a hydraulic car that's got air and they get squishy, that doesn't happen on this. Like, you either have your brakes or you don't, and they just lock up. So on the newer Renegades within the last couple of years, they've added this suspension dump for the rear, so like for leveling. The reason they did that is all vehicles sit nose down in the front for aerodynamic purposes, like a wedge. Well, if you're sitting on a perfectly level surface and you go to level your jacks, the front jacks are going to hit the ground first, the rear jacks are going to hit the ground second, and you have to pick the front of the vehicle up that much more to get it level. Well, if you dump the air first, it brings the rear down closer to the ground, and so now your jacks have to do less work to level out. It's helpful when it comes to like on a level surface. It's helpful. It could really be helpful if your vehicle's already at a slant and the nose is just that much lower anyways because the slope of where you've got it parked. By being able to dump that air first just helps you out that much more being able to level the vehicle. Spot lamp, which is what's underneath the hood. That way if you're out there in the nighttime and want to check anything, you've got a light out there that you can turn on. You can turn off lane alert, so when you're drifting lanes and it's very abrupt and you can't turn that off if you're not a big fan of lane alert. You do have locking differential. Just keep in mind that locking differential is only for low speeds because you're locking both tires in to turn at the same rate of speed, so like to get out of soft ground. So a lot of people don't realize that when you're driving a vehicle and turning, that actually one wheel is turning a different speed than the other. And so by locking them together, you're causing rubber to drag. So you only use it at low speeds to really get out of like a, if you're trying to come up out of a campground or somewhere with ice and snow and you just need the extra traction, you can do that. But once you're moving, you need it'll actually kick itself off at a certain point. But just understand how that works is handy.
Sure.
You have a TPS system. If I can figure out which button gets me over there. So your TPS system, here's your front tires. We're currently sitting at 123, 112, 109. Well, they're all over the place, which is fine. We can adjust them some when we get outside. So you go up and down. So like there's my rear tires, 112, 109, 112, 112. Go back to the front. So you can just cycle through, and it shows you your temperature of the tire, and then of course the PSI over here. So that's pretty handy. It'll alert you if the tires get outside of a acceptable range.
Yep. Now, does this coach come with any feature to be able to monitor
Nope.
trailer tires? That's an accessory you have to add on.
Accessory, and
aftermarket.
that would be handy for this. They make some that we go on that track.
Yeah.
That you could mount up here and just do a wireless to the rear back.
Yeah. By the way, great job on the installation of the Voyager.
Yeah,
that looks really cool. You can now see the rear out of the coach all the time camera, or when you flip the signal light on, it goes to the side marker.
Yeah. So if I flip the blinker, it'll flip to the left.
Yeah. Yeah. Really nice job with the install there. Nice and clean and.
I was like, man, why does that look? Because the hood's up. Like, why does that look so
But it
weird?
lets you have full access to your GPS system all the time, so you're not using that one screen for all functions. You have that secondary screen, so nice job.
And then I go right back to the. And then what I really people can add. There's a Garmin option for a second screen, but there's no CarPlay function here. But what I would still prefer this, and the reason I'm a button person, so like when I'm driving. I know instead of having to like go through menus on a touch screen to try to figure out what I want to do, literally I can just reach up here and hit the button and cycle through my cameras.
Yep,
So
super nice.
Makes it super easy. And then we did this RAM mount deal, so it gives you a lot of adjustability because you may want to put this somewhere different.
Yep.
And you could even, you can get a shorter arm. If you want to move it back. Somewhere,
Right.
However, here's a switch that allows you to switch between the truck and trailer camera on the rear. This is your 3.5 and USB feed to your radio, a 12 volt plug, which has got your cigarette thingy in there, which old school, and then another 12 volt, and then that's your collision mitigation system, which is for your if you collision, it'll beep at you for collision avoidance. And then that's also what controls your adaptive cruise control. So this vehicle, when you set your cruise, it'll maintain a distance and give you a readout of how far the vehicle in front of you is from you. And then just standard HVAC stuff.
Yep.
Just cool and heat and all that kind of stuff. This button here is just what does the. If you're in a, I would always recommend pulling fresh. The HVAC systems are pretty strong, so I would recommend pulling fresh air for the most part. But if you're somewhere where like there's an outside odor problem, then maybe like just cycle the same air inside the cab.
So a couple questions on if you're driving the coach long distance and you got some passengers back here buckled in safely, you're running the cab air, might not keep them either hot or cold. You could run if you need it warm, you could run your AquaHot.
Yep.
For heat. If you're wanting more cool back here, what options do you have?
For normal weather, you'll be pretty good. But for extreme heat or extreme cold, you could run your AquaHot. You can just run off of diesel. You can run the diesel burner and heat the coach, no problem.
Right.
If you want to cool the coach, then you would need to fire up your generator and then run the HVAC systems in the ceiling, which is perfectly fine. You just need to be aware of, the more you run, you can run your generator run down the road. But if you're running it in places where it's like dusty roads and stuff, just be aware that you may want to be more cautious to. If it's been like a lot, depending on what your routine is, that at least servicing the generator every year and saying, hey, definitely change out my air filter, or even potentially more. It just depends on if you,
right.
Most people don't use their generator to the extreme, Some do, but most don't. I mean,
Yeah, but
most
if-
people are lucky to get to 200 hours in a year, but there's people who will run them 400 hours in a year. It just depends.
Yeah, but if you're taking a 20-hour trip across from here to California and you're out in the middle of Texas and it's hot, you want to start your generator up.
Yeah,
and-
you can run anytime you want. It's just just being aware of, like, mentally, like, the environment you're running your generator in, and if it's a lot of dusty roads, because that no matter where your generator is located, you're creating dust, which is going to get sucked through, no different than your engine. It's going to pull that dusty air. So just knowing that have your air filters checked out more frequently.
Sure,
depending on where
makes
you're doing.
sense.
Because you're not going to suck near the dust and dirt if it's just on a park running. And that's really all for the cam.
Okay.
Now do you have anything?
No, I mean, great explanation. Obviously, you know your product extremely well, and folks who are interested in purchasing a very high-quality coach should come see Kyle.
Oh, I appreciate that. You're awful nice.